systems. The global conversation represents so much of what we hope the coming year will be about. Many people from different walks of life are coming together to engage in solutions-oriented dialogues and to address the roots of what we want to achieve over the next 10 years. Our vision is to make this a people's summit, giving voice to citizens in every country of the world. With its activities spread over more than a year, the summit will bring together key players from the world of science, business, policy, healthcare, academia, as well as farmers, indigenous people, youth organizations, consumer groups, environmental activists, everyone, including you. I believe we can all find common ground in which we can grow a sustainable future together. We already know what we want the future to look like. We have the Sustainable Development Goals to guide us and to support how we will measure our progress in achieving the future. Food is the instrument that touches all our lives, and through its lens, we can realize this vision of a better world. We must be bold. We must think and act differently. Transforming our food system is the most powerful action we can take to solve our biggest problems. Join us today. Join the Food System Summit. Join the conversation. Join the global dialogue we are launching today and over the course of the coming year. And together, I'm very confident we can build a just and resilient world where no one is left behind.
Hello, everybody. Very warm welcome. You are watching and listening to Voices of Food Systems Live, a 24-hour global relay conversation. And happy Food Day. Happy World Food Day to everybody. My name is Nigel Brett. I am the Director of Asia Pacific Division in the International Fund for Agricultural Development, and I will be your moderator for the next hour. And we will have a one-hour session looking at non-violent movements in support of sustainable food systems. And it's going to be an action-packed session. We have some really passionate, inspirational youth activists from all over the world who will be sharing their diverse perspectives on the theme. And let me say a few words about how the session is going to be structured so you know what to expect. We have 3 separate sub-sessions, one after the other. The first will be focused on exploring the non-violent approach. And we will hear from Piuli, a youth activist from India, and Victor, a youth activist from Kenya. The second session will explore non-violence in terms of the relationship with the natural world. And we will hear from 3 more passionate youth activists, Molatello from South Africa, Tabi from West Africa, and Pramisha from Nepal. And then we will have a third and final session which will explore people's movements and the mobilization of communities. And we'll hear from Melissa, a youth activist from Philippines, and Joshua, a youth activist from Indonesia. And throughout our 3 sessions, we're going to be breaking things up a bit by screening some film clips that follow the journey of one of our youth activists, Joshua, who traveled from Indonesia to India to join 9 other youth leaders to march for a better future with the ILC Jagagat Fellowship Program. And the march took them on a 100 kilometers journey through the congested roads of central India to the paddy fields of the rural communities while learning about the principles of the non-violent movement with Ekta Parishad. And we, of course, want this session to be interactive. So there will be an opportunity to ask questions to our guests in a Q&A session. So let me remind everyone, please send in your questions using the chat function on social media links so that I can feed those questions to our guests later on. And before I start the first session, let me say a few words about the theme itself. We've all witnessed a massive resurgence in non-violent protest over the past few months and years. We've had Me Too, Black Lives Matter, Extinction Rebellion, the school strikes for climate. And these movements have really resonated, particularly among younger people. And looking at food systems, young people are also taking the lead in a non-violent struggle for land rights and access to natural resources, particularly for marginalized groups, and are lobbying for more sustainable food systems and food practices and a healthier relationship with the natural world, with local communities much more in the driving seat. And of course, nonviolence is not new. That Gandhi, the father of nonviolence, said nonviolence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. And there are wonderful examples from all over the world of just how powerful these movements are, ranging from the Salt March in India to the suffragette movement, and of course the Montgomery bus protest in the civil rights movement. So great examples throughout history. So without further ado, let's get things moving. And I'd like to ask the organizers if we could play the first clip of Joshua's journey for peace. And this clip shows Joshua arriving in India and getting ready to march towards a better future.
We have been too quiet for too long. There comes a time when you have to say something, when you have to make a little noise, when you have to move your feet. This is the time. The time to act is now. We will be silent no more. The time for silence is over.
I have heard about non-violence movement by marching from India to Geneva. I was really curious to know about this program. And luckily was assigned by my office to take part in this movement. But I also doubt myself if I could walk such a long journey, because it will be 100 kilometers, But my enthusiasm, my curiosity defeat my doubt. So I decide I have to take part with this movement. That will be incredible experience that I have in my life.
Great, thank you. And you'll be seeing more clips later on through the session. So let's get things moving with the first session, where we will be discussing the nonviolent approach. And we have Piyuli, a youth activist from Ekta Parishad in India. Piyuli's passion is building nonviolent linkages between farmers and consumers and promoting nonviolent ways of engaging with biodiversity and the soil. We also have Victor Mugo with us from Kenya. Victor works on advocating for access to idle government land for young farmers to practice climate-smart agriculture. And he has engaged in the Save Our Forests campaign and raised awareness about forest destruction in Kenya. And the campaign actually led to a 9-month ban on national logging in Kenya, so it was very successful. So Piyuli, could you start things off and say a few words about nonviolence and give us a real-life example involving young people? Over to you, Piyuli.
Thank you so much, Nigel, for your question. And I would like to do it in 3 parts. I would like to describe how I understand, what do I think are violent approaches in food systems, and how here in India, we are adopting a lot of non-violent ways to curb those, to cater to those. So the first kind of violence in food systems that I think is violence towards poor and marginalized communities. Like we all all know that a lot of indigenous tribal communities, they do not have land and livelihood resources. Their lands have been grabbed by some other forces. So this is one kind of violence towards those marginalized communities. So how do we solve this problem? How do we cater to this through a non-violent approach? So as you all saw in the video, that in India there are these lot of long foot marches that are carried on by Ekta Parishad, which involves hundreds and thousands of people representing different states, representing different communities. There are a lot of farmers, there are a lot of people from the marginalized communities, women, youth, both urban and rural youth, who walk hundreds and thousands of kilometers, demonstrating a lot of non-violent actions, going across villages, across cities, talking to people, talking to communities, understanding their issues, bringing out their voices, and then also negotiating with the government forces to bring about concrete land reforms. So there's a lot of dialogue involved in this entire process throughout the foot march. Um, there's a lot of non-violent, peaceful dialogue involved with different government systems, with and with the communities. Apart from that, if you look at a foot march, when people walk thousands of kilometers, there's also a sense of sacrifice, which is also a form of non-violence. So this is one non-violent approach that is being taken to solve the problems of these poor and marginalized communities, wherein there's a lot of representation from those communities as well, so their voices also come out. The second kind of violence that I see in food systems is the way we treat our land, our soil, and our biodiversity. So in India, after the Green Revolution, the know-how of farming has changed into the chemical farming approach, and farmers, they use a lot of chemicals, highly modified seeds on their land, for which they have to pay huge amount of prices as well. But they still do that because that is the understanding. And through that, what do? You kill the soil life. So this is a form of violence towards the soil, towards the biodiversity. You're killing it. So what do we do? On the contrary, we all know that the organic farming approach, the sustainable farming approach. So here what we do is we work with a lot of youngsters, urban youth. We get them involved. We organize a lot of activities wherein they engage with farmers on organic farmlands, and they learn the organic way of farming. And there are a lot of farmers here in Bhopal in India where we are working. We are actually associated, among all the farmers that we are associated, almost 70% of them are youth who are practicing organic farming. So this is another kind. The third kind of violence in food systems come where there is the trade between farmers and consumers. So in India, the supply chain is such that there are a lot of middlemen involved between the producers and the consumers. And these middlemen are powerful people, and they exploit the farmers a lot in terms of, so the farmers, they do not get proper prices for their crops. And in certain climatic conditions, like if there's drought or if there's heavy rain, the farmers face a lot of crop failure issues, and because of which they go into huge debts, and there are a lot of farmer suicides happening in India. So this is a form of violence in the supply chain, wherein the farmers are exploited, they are not paid proper prices, because of which a lot of suicides are happening. So what the approach that we are adopting in Bhopal city is that we are trying to connect farmers directly to the consumers without any middlemen coming in between. So we are organizing farmers markets here. We are trying to promote the idea of community supported agriculture, wherein customers, the consumers, they get directly involved with the farmers. They form a relationship, a strong relationship, and there is no sense of exploitation there. So that is one approach that we are following, one non-violent approach, wherein we are connecting farmers to consumers directly, and these are farmers who are practicing organic farming. So this is another approach that we are taking up. These are three kinds of violence and the kind of non-violent approaches that we are using.
Fantastic, really terrific examples there, Piuli. Let me now ask Victor, if you could say a few words about your motivation to join a non-violent movement to stop deforestation, and how did it lead to a logging ban in your specific case? Over to you, Victor.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening for wherever you are joining us from across the globe. We are so delighted that you could join us for this. And more so, I am really excited to speak about a topic that is extremely dear to my heart. Young people self-organizing, taking initiative and mobilizing to create non-violent social movements that create change. With this, I am really tempted to speak about the Climate Smart Agriculture Youth Network and its advocacy to have government release some of its idle land for youth to engage in climate smart agriculture. But however, I will speak about Save Our Forests campaign because there are already tangible results that we can speak about in this. And so it so happened that in Kenya, tree loggers were taking advantage of a law in the country where a few of them had been licensed to cut down old dilapidated trees on the edges of the forest to allow for the growth of new ones. However, due to lack of enforcement, it became the case that they were not only cutting down trees on the edges of the forest, they were cutting down trees even deep in the forest. They were not only cutting down old trees, they were cutting new trees, young trees, and robust trees. They were not only they were not even planting trees as was stipulated by the law, that after they were cutting trees, they were supposed to plant new ones. And even it became so worse that unlicensed loggers decided even to start decimating the forests. And so this had gone unnoticed for quite some time from the public eye. And so a young lady, her name is Wanjuhi Njoroge, started noticing these changes and started taking photos, taking videos, and documenting the widespread decimation of the Mount Kenya forest. And so she took to Twitter to share the photos and the videos in a campaign that she dubbed Save Mount Kenya Forest. And so in no time, other people started joining her and started sharing their photos and sharing their videos about the states of their forests, even the states of their rivers and the lakes. And so this conversation morphed from just Save Mount Kenya Forest into Save Our Forest in Kenya. And so there was a huge public outcry that gathered momentum, that gathered the media's attention and caught the government's eye. And so with this, there were a few changes that were made. The Deputy President of the Republic announced a 9-month ban on tree logging in Kenya, and an audit on the Kenya Forestry Service led to the board members being replaced. And so a small act where just one person was engaging in had attracted other people like us and had led to a non-violent movement that eventually yielded incredible results. In fact, just to report on this is that the ban on tree logging is still effective till today, 2.5 years later. And so I'm really encouraged by an African proverb that states that once a village comes together, then they can even mend a crack in the sky. And so this is just the beginning and just an example of the endless possibilities when young people self-organize, take initiative, mobilize to create non-violent social movements for change in their communities. Thank you so much.
Wow, terrific example, and congratulations on your achievement there. Really amazing story. So we've heard two great different perspectives from different regions. What I'd like to do now is break things up a bit and introduce the second clip of Joshua's journey in India. And this is where Joshua meets his fellowship youth activists for the first time.
I arrived and joined with the other young activists coming from different countries, from Africa continent, Asia, and Central America. We are learning and understanding the process of non-violence movement here in India. And we all hope when we're coming back to our countries, we will bring something meaningful to create the non-violence community in our countries. It's something amazing, I think. And it needs process and it needs patience.
Okay, so thanks again to Piuli and Victor. So now let's move on to the second segment, where we're going to explore non-violence in terms of the relationship with the natural world and with land. And we have three activists with us. Molatello from South Africa. And Molatello is very interested in equitable land rights and land distribution for poor people. We have Pramisha, who is a youth activist from Nepal, and she's passionate about sustainable food systems and how they help, particularly with the climate crisis. And we have Tabi, a land rights activist from West Africa, and is passionate about land, particularly young indigenous farmers. So let's jump straight in. Molatello, I'd like you to please share with us your story about the struggles of smallholder farmers in South Africa. Over to you, Molatello.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all. Thanks, Miguel, for sharing this. And a good day to everyone who's commemorating this International Food Day. So the struggle of smallholder farmers in South Africa is not unique to a lot of farmers outside our borders. The smallholder farmers in South Africa are just like in other parts of the world. It's a group that really needs support in terms of capital injection, which the government usually shy away from. Even the private sector is also not involved in terms of supporting them financially and technically. So they also struggle to meet the market limitations, because the limitations are sort of almost impossible for smallholders to participate in the formal economy, because they are not resourced in their nature, unlike their counterpart, the commercial farmers. And the worrying thing is that government interventions are not normally partisan to the small scale farmers, which need that a lot of financial and material support. So the exclusion from participating in the formal economy is, I see it as a structural approach, in a sense that the small scale farmers, being majority in the country and outside our country, they are not in majority in terms of land ownership and access, even though they are producing in their small scale, but feeding a lot of communities. So there is a notion that commercial farmers are, even though they are few in units, the commercial farmers are feeding the nation and the world, because they are exporting their produce and stuff. So there is that notion from the government to say, this is the group that need more support than any other. And these are families and units that own chunk of land parcels in the country. Although the country is one of those, I mean, South Africa has just been rated one of the unequal society recently. So if we take that into consideration, we'll see that there is a need for a massive land redistribution, so that people can have access to land and also be self-reliant. Because once you have land, then you'll be self-reliant, and then you'll depend on your energy and labor, so that you can you don't have to buy everything. You can buy a few and then produce more for your family, and also have opportunity to have source of income. So if my view is that, like I just mentioned, the government need to redistribute a sizable amount of land parcel to, especially to the poor, the smallholders, because they are majority in number, and then they can be self-reliant, as I've mentioned, and that will be a key part of contributing to the transforming the land reform in the country, so that we can have a level field where people will have equal access to land and control. So if that takes place, then we won't have over 800 million people suffering from hunger in the world. So people will have access to land and will be in control of what they eat, because we also suffering from eating food that is not nutritious in this world. Yeah, so that's basically my view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Molatello. Okay, Pramisha, I hope you're online. Please go ahead and share your thoughts on sustainable food systems and land management. How can better land management help with the climate crisis? Over to you, Pramisha.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you very much. And namaste, everyone. I have always wanted to work towards a solution, and non-violent activism has been my buddy since my awareness of different issues. I believe that if we want to accomplish peace, security, and the world with justice, there is no way other than peaceful, non-violent movement. The awareness of the urgency of the situation made me an advocate for climate and agriculture issues. I have seen the huge land destruction due to unsustainable land management practices, and I have also observed how the climate crisis exacerbated unsustainable agriculture and consumption practices, how unsustainable agriculture and consumption practices have worsened the climate crisis. We all know that agriculture has been both part of the problem and solution of the climate crisis. Having been in the climate and food space for more than 5 years almost, I believe that transformation of our current consumption patterns and land management practices could be the #1 solution to the climate crisis. Transition towards planet-based diets from singly animal-based diets could help us to curb emissions rapidly, and similarly, sustainable land management practices also help us in huge carbon sequestration. Speaking with the youths of my country and also global youths through various forums and writing about these issues have been my nonviolent youth approach in regards to my activism. My work has been through sitting at the tables with decision makers to push change. As a young person who deeply cared for environmental and agricultural issues, I have written and lobbied numerous position papers which were fed into prime decision-making processes. During the process of the Coronivia joint work on agriculture, we have held and still leading youth civil society delegations to push our views and demands on agriculture with member states. We have been quite successful to lobby with member states and constituted bodies to push our views and make our voice heard actually in the decision-making processes. Similarly, my research with smallholder farmers on climate change adaptation in Nepal back in 2018, and my current role as agriculture instructor to teach kids various agriculture practices and motivate young people, I think all these are non-violent approaches. My current role in different organizations in engaging and creating space for young people in the grassroots and acting as a bridge between those youths and UN entities, everything is blended with the nonviolent approach that I have taken and I deeply care about. I'm confident that any movement with a nonviolent approach can help us to reach our goals. Although it seems slow and boring in the first moment, but I'm certain it will have huge and sustainable impacts in the long run. Having said this, I wish you all happy World Food Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pramisha. It was really interesting examples you gave. Okay, so Tabby, third speaker for this session. Please tell us about how transformative land use can help prevent violence in Africa. Over to you, Tabby.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. It's a warm pleasure for me to join you in this session. And as a practicing farmer and a food champion all my life, working with young people across Africa, and of course, in one of Africa's largest non-state land restoration movement, Create 1 Billion Trees for Africa, it is very obvious that there is enough land, there is much land everywhere, but there isn't enough productive land for youth, for indigenous communities. As such, there is a great need to leverage non-violent transformative land use innovations that enhances the rights of young people to access, young people and indigenous people to equitable access to productive land, to technologies, and to the opportunities of knowledge that enhances their efficient use of this land in such a way that it produces enough nutritious and safe food, and of course in such a way that it also helps in reducing the often deprivations that creates the inequalities that often come out as a result of these, as a result of these inequalities, which breeds unhealthy and often violent competitions due to scarce productive land. For instance, advocating for support for young people on how to use minimum land space, minimum financial resources, and minimum human labor to be able to achieve productivity. These are very important, very important ingredients in fostering non-violent movements in food systems, just like Pramisha earlier said. This goes a long way to improve not only the livelihoods of young people, it goes very far in enhancing their self-esteem, creating employment, supporting their dignity and the dignity of their ecosystem, and long-term enhancing their capacity to be productive members of society, whereas at the same time reducing the potential vulnerabilities that often leads youth into sometimes violent conflict or violent movements, which might result from often the deprivations or scarce productive land. And that's exactly what we are doing in leading one of Africa's biggest movements, the land restoration movement, the 1 billion trees for Africa, which is a movement that enhances these rights, this access, because right to access to land is right to living, it's right to food, it's right to sustenance. So enhancing these rights, achieving it equitably and sustainably is very important in future and now transformation in food systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tabby. Really amazing examples there. So we come to the end of the second session, and before we start the third session, let's see the third clip of Joshua's journey. And here we see how the struggle for land rights in India have similarities in Indonesia.
In Indonesia, more than 50% are having no land. But 1% of Indonesian people own or control more than 50% of our land. So when I had discussion with Raja Gopal, he said that Indian people do not have legal certificate. They manage the land, but it doesn't mean they have the land. So it's also happened in Indonesia. Many Indonesian people do not have security for their land. The similarity that I find in Indonesia is also in India.
Great. So now let's move on to the final round, and we'll be talking about people's movements and mobilizing communities. And we have two youth activists in this round. Melissa Alamo from the Philippines works with young farmers on land rights and issues of sustainability. And her key message to everyone is the right to land is the right to food. And we also have Joshua, who you've seen on the film, from Indonesia. And Joshua is a youth activist working on land rights for young people in West Papua and focusing on issues of land grabbing. So let's jump straight in. Joshua, please go ahead, share your experience and tell us about the struggle of land rights in Indonesia. Over to you, Joshua.
Thank you, Nigel. But before I giving a short message, I want to sing a song that maybe want to describe about our situation in Indonesia. Kulihat ibu pertiwi sedang bersusah hati, air matanya berlinang. Mas intan yang kau kenang, hutan, gunung, sawah, lautan, simpanan kekayaan. Kini ibu sedang susah merintih dan berdoa. Yeah, just a little bit correction, Nigel. It's not West Papua, but West Java, but it's okay. So this song that I sung, it's describing the present situation of Indonesia right now. So the founding fathers of this nation must feel ashamed seeing the unfair system and the unfair regulation made by this current country leaders. A few days ago, the government and together with the House of Representatives enacted job creation bill of Omnibus Law. This policy clearly made to give red carpet for investment and investors without caring what people need, what real people need. And the impact then, the land rights inequality happened in Indonesia, and land conflict numbers is getting increased, and the land use conversion is getting massive from agriculture to plantation, and the farmer who are living in the villages will remain poor. And at the end, the rich will be richer and the poor will be poorer. The peasant in the village is not planting food anymore because the government will import food as the main policy. And then we as the young people, wherever we are and whoever we are, must fight for our rights and for our land rights. So this happened as what I've been doing now, and together with the young people in West Java. So they're coming, the young people coming with the initiative business to collect the products of their parents, and then they use it, they manage it, and like for example, they are the parents or they're planting coffee, and then the products they manage it by themselves. They're learning how to manage the coffee, how to use the coffee, and how to sell the coffee, because nowadays it's not too much difficult to sell the products. They doing online, they're doing everything in the online market. So and it's working, and now the young people in the West Java could get benefit and could be sustainable with their own efforts. So that's the success story, how the land is very useful for the people in the village. So long live people struggling. Thank you. Back to you, Nigel.
That was great and really nice to hear you playing the guitar. So before we go to Melissa, let's see clip 4 from your journey in India and hear about what it takes to build ownership in a social movement.
I was really lucky because I got the opportunity to have discussion with Rajaji and how he built the ownership of this movement to the people. How he convinced the people that this way, this movement will lead them to justice and peace.
If you know that the success of a movement cannot be achieved unless people own the movement. The moment you say Forest Rights Act, it is our achievement. They go to the government officials and say, look, it is because of my struggle this law has come. Now implement it. Now that courage comes out of it. So I think the degree of ownership will make it better.
Okay, so Melissa, please go ahead and tell us about your work on land rights and sustainable farming.
Hi Nigel, I have prepared a video to capture all my talking points. So I guess it won't be played in. Yeah, I would love to play that because I want also to honor the people behind our movement here in the Philippines. So if you really have time, just a short clips of that video, the one that I made, please do so. Yeah, that's it.
Magandang araw. Good day, everyone. This is Melissa Alamo from Pakisama, a national confederation of family farmer organization in the Philippines. As we celebrate the World Food Day today, as what Agnes Kalibata emphasized, that let this be a people's summit, a solution summit, where we act together to address the major threats confronting our food security. Alone in their fight. There are many organizations, institutions, and development partners who never cease to fight and help the rural sector, especially the youth. One great example of a changed mindset in agriculture is the story of Jumar Marcaida, our young farmer leader in the Philippines.
Ang aking buhay ay halimbawa ng isang kabataan na sa unay ayaw sa pagsasaka, ngunit may prinsipyong palaguin ang sariling kaisipan at pagkatao at magkaroon ng kahulugan sa buhay, kaya't sumubok sa pagsasaka. At sa suporta ng mga institusyon ay ngayoy nagagawang palaguin ang pagsasaka. Sa kapwa ko kabataang magsasaka sa Asia, palakasin natin ang boses sa paglaban at pagsulong sa ating mga karapatan at ng ibang sektor. Ipakita natin na may magagawa tayo at kaya natin sa kabila ng mga balakid at pandemya. Organisahin at palakasin ang hanay. Isulong natin ang karapatan sa lupa ng pamilyang magsasaka. Isulong at buhayin ang sustainableng pagsasaka. At planuhin paano natin maiaangat ang mga produkto sa merkado. Paano papatingkarin ang mga lokal na produkto ng mga magsasaka.
Let this be a wake-up call that no farmer, no food, no future. And our right to land is our right to food.
Great video. Great call to action, Melissa. And I just want to underline the call to action for the Food Systems Summit. You know, people can go to the website, sign up as a food systems hero, get engaged, and get their voices into the summit. So thanks very much, Melissa.
Thank you, Nigel.
So let's move now to clip 4 of Joshua's journey. And here we see Joshua reflecting on the people that he met along the way.
So we have been marching for at least 70 kilometers. We're marching in the traffic, in the crowd. Maybe in Gandhi's era, there were no so many vehicles like today. We stopped and had many discussions about land issue. How the people in that area do not have land, about their problems, about the challenge we shared. I saw paddy fields, I saw river, hills. We are rich in natural resources and we have to maintain it.
Great. Okay, so I would like to invite all the youth leaders back in the room. I'm sure there are many of you out there who wanted a chance to ask questions. And it would be nice to have some opportunity to hear more from Piuli, Victor, Pramisha, Melissa, Joshua, Molatello, and Tabby. So maybe just let me start things off by just asking you to reflect on, you know, what is your advice to young people out there? How do they get involved in these type of movements? And open to anybody to jump in here.
Nigel, can I go ahead?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Nigel. First of all, I advise all youth to be informed about the problem we are facing and to know what our community and what we are facing and what it is leading to if we don't act now. So once you get informed about the problem, then you need to act. Act by small. You don't need to do a bit more large or anything, but you can start by small. So my advice is to think about the problem, then act towards the solution.
And please, Melissa, perhaps, Piuli, what are your views? What do you say to young people out there? How can they get involved?
Nigel, can I?
So,
Melissa, go ahead, and then Piuli.
Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
my short advice really for the youth, for the real youth, for the young farmers is that we believe in them. So it's really high time to invest in the capacities of our youth, of our young farmers in today's generation. So as you can see that there are many things happening around the world, and they really played an important role in that, especially in the non-violent movement. So that they are the change agent in achieving and attaining a just and resilient world, especially for the young farmers. They are our modern heroes. They are our second liner food hero. So believe in you, we trust in your capacities and skills. That's all.
How about you, Piuli? What is your message?
So since we work a lot with urban youth and youth who are very far from this entire discourse of food, farming, and all of that, but there's something as fundamental as food or land or soil and agriculture. If we today's youth, we do not connect to the land, we do not connect to the issues like this, then I think the future is our own future is bleak. So very simple things start from, especially talking about urban youth who are actually far, start from growing simple things at your home. Once you start growing, you will know what it means for a farmer to work days and years on the land. So start growing little amounts of food in your own home, in your own garden spaces, and try to engage better with the land, because the struggle for food is going to go forever. Everything else will come to an end someday, but this is going to go forever. So, this is something that we need to definitely engage with. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
And I have another question coming in, which is, I mean, there's so much bad news going around. How do you keep hopeful? Tabby, perhaps reflect on that. How, what is your message to young people about keeping hopeful?
Keeping hopeful starts from your heart, starts from where you are. If you wake up in the morning and you see the sun shining at your window, at your door, it means there is a hope around you. Take that opportunity of the energy that is coming from the sun, from the oxygen that is around you. That is where hope begins. Just for example, let me just share with you at the background here. You don't have to have so much land space. You can see what I have here. All the varieties of plants are right here, right in your home, right? Just like Pioli said, it doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter where you are. You can even be on a rock. There is hope right there on that rock. So to say, hope starts from the heart, and it just takes a little more energy to get out of the comfort zone. Don't feel that you are not capable. Don't also feel that you must be pushed by someone, because the ability for you to take your hand into a plate to take food or to pick an apple and bite, it's the same kind of ability. You can take that apple to convert it into a monetary value that can change your own life. The same energy can be used in transforming the land around you into value that delivers on the ecosystem's health, on your own health, and of course on the food systems for everybody on the planet. I think that's the kind of hope that I have, and which I really want everybody to share. And of course, then two, finally, learn from those around you. Don't be shy to ask questions. Don't be shy to meet people who know something that you think you can learn from them. And of course, no one learns on their own. So I'm here, I'm also very willing to share knowledge. So let's all also be very, very willing to share knowledge. That is the wider hope that can keep our planet on the path of sustainability, on the path of resilience in terms of our climate system, our food systems, and of course, our own healthy planet system. Thank you.
I would love to keep this Q&A session going, but I'm being told by the organizers we have 1 minute left, and we still have the final clip of Joshua's film. So I'm really sorry, we're going to have to wrap it up. And I'd just like the organizers to show the sixth clip of Joshua's film, please.
This success story have not been heard by many young people in the city. I think it's connected with how we speak, stand, and discuss about non-violence. That's what Raj Gopal said yesterday. We have to spread the non-violence movement. We have to make it wider and larger, and we have to ask as many people to understand about this movement. I think that would be good if we try to make non-violence community among the young people in Jakarta and West Java. It would be good if we could collaborate together and see what will happen. Jai Jagat Utarja Suramante Farja Jai Jagat.
Great. Time to wrap up, unfortunately. It's been a terrific session. Thanks so much to all the inspiring activists who joined us. I learned a huge amount in a very short space of time. It was great to hear about your stories, your struggles, about the nonviolent approach. I think the biggest thing that came out to me is how many faces there are of the nonviolent movement, issues around social equity, marginal groups, the focus on women, on indigenous peoples, also issues around land, access to land and natural resources, land rights, land grabbing, tenurial security, all those issues. And then finally, we heard also issues around environmental quality, sustainability, climate change, issues around diversity, crop diversity, the importance of soil health. So many different aspects of the nonviolent movement. And you've certainly convinced me, and I'm sure thousands of other people around the world, to explore the potential of nonviolence when it comes to sustainable food systems. And you've also convinced me that young people are really going to be key drivers in pushing this forward, pushing these nonviolent movements forward. So just remind everybody, call of action for the Food Systems Summit. Please go to the website as a food and sign up as a food systems hero and get engaged. Stay connected to the next session, which is also a fascinating session on farming and dryland ecosystems. And with that, many thanks to everybody. Back to the organizers. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you for bringing your voice to the 24 Global Leader Conversation on Food Systems. The global conversation represents so much of what we hope the coming year will be about. Many people from different walks of life are coming together to engage in solutions-oriented dialogues and to address the roots of what we want to achieve over the next 10 years. Our vision is to make this a people's summit, giving voice to citizens in every country of the world. With its activities spread over more than a year, the summit will bring together key players from the world of science, business, policy, healthcare, academia, as well as farmers, indigenous people, youth organizations, consumer groups, environmental activists, everyone, including you. I believe we can all find common ground in which we can grow a sustainable future together. We already know what we want the future to look like. We have the Sustainable Development Goals to guide us and to support how we will measure our progress in achieving the future. Food is the instrument that touches all our lives, and through its lens, we can realize this vision of a better world. We must be bold. We must think and act differently. Transforming our food system is the most powerful action we can take to solve our biggest problems. Join us today. Join the Food Systems Summit. Join the conversation. Join the global dialogue we are launching today and over the course of the coming year. And together, I'm very confident we can build a just and resilient world where no one is left behind.
Everyone in the world has gone to bed one night or another with fear or pain or loss. And yet each of us has awakened, risen, somehow made our ablution, seen other human beings, and said, "Morning, how are you?"
Hi, namaste. Ciao. Good morning. Hola.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust. I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes. Shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just because I laugh. As if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words. You can cut me with your lies. You can kill me with your hatefulness. But just like life, I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain, I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. I rise. We rise.
Goodness, feed me. Goodness, feed me. Goodness, feed me. Goodness, feed me. Take me home.
Good morning, everyone, excellencies, colleagues, good afternoon. And for our friends farther east and farther west, good night, and again, good morning. I'm very, very honored to be here with you. Happy World Food Day. I'm Sara Roversi. I'm the founder and director of the Future Food Institute, and I'm very honored to serve as your moderator for this Middle Eastern celebration of this very special day. This very special day is, of course, co-hosted by the United Nations and the United Arab Emirates. This is a very unique World Food Day because literally we are celebrating with the 24-hour relay around the globe. Earlier today, very early for us in Italy, we started the celebration kicking off the journey with the president of Fiji. And our colleagues in India have just passed the baton to us in the UAE. And then we're going to hand over to our friends in Ethiopia, really flying all around until tonight. The reason this is such a special World Food Day is because it's also the introduction of the United Nations Food Systems Summit. And this is a special time in history because in September next year, the world leaders and hundreds of thousands of people will convene at the summit to commit to transform the way we produce food, we consume food, we distribute food, because we need to fix food systems everywhere. Our goals are big ones, and of course, we want to end hunger everywhere. We want to create jobs. We want to, of course, reduce the climate change and all the environmental impact of our industry. And we want to make people healthier and happier everywhere. From now until then, the United Nations will support countries to make this happen. And also with the support of countries like the UAE, the United Nations are going to facilitate the world's really to start this huge global conversation. So we really think that this is an incredible time in history. And as a contribution to the process, today we are diving into the future of agriculture, looking how technology is reshaping the way we produce food and how technology can help us to solve and fix the system. The United Arab Emirates is not traditionally understood as the center of agriculture, but I always found a lot of inspirations, a lot of innovation, a lot of bright minds that are making things happen. It's one of the dearest and hottest country in the world and imports the most vast majority of its food. And yet, precisely this reason, is also the cutting edge of agriculture technology, with the majority of the implication that, of course, we can understand from the broader Middle East and all the other countries that don't have access to fresh water. So we're very lucky today because we have an incredible group of speakers that, of course, are making this thing happen and are going to show us what they're doing to solve this issue. But now I think it's time to jump into the conversation, and I'm sure that I'm gonna stimulate the appetite to know more about this country. And I wanna leave the stage to Minister Almeri. We are very, very honored today, and thank you so much for joining us. You took office in 2017, becoming one of the first ministers in the world. Was full-time job is to thinking about how and from where we get our food from. I think that this is a big challenge. And I think that, Minister, as we look the next years for the United Nations Food System Summit to make the difference in the world, I really want to learn from you what kind of technology, what kind of strategies you have on mind and you think we need to pursue to make these things happen.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. Hello, everyone from near and far, and greetings from the United Arab Emirates. We are a small country in the Middle East, but we are a country with, as Sarah says, great ambitions and big dreams. So thank you all for joining us today on this very exciting 24-hour global relay. And I want to shout out to the Food System Summit team and also the Food Future Institute for all their efforts in putting this together. So, ladies and gentlemen, just as air is a need for us and water is a need for us to live, food too is essential for our very existence. Food is not only a need that we need, but it's also something that connects us in so many different ways. Food is culture. And so this is the reason why we are all gathered here today to celebrate food on World Food Day. One of the most important days that we feel in the Food and Water Security Office is precisely this day. We want to use this day to reflect and to highlight our relationship with food and also the challenges and opportunities that humanity has surrounding this. So World Food Day, as you all know, this year has really taken on an even greater significance. I mean, 2020 has seen humanity face an unprecedented threat in the form of the COVID-19 pandemic. All of us have been affected. And as you can imagine, it really has also affected the movement of food to the people. So it is now more than ever that we must join hands and we must as nations come together and discuss and find ways to help each other to ramp up the creation of sustainable food systems. We need to ensure that no one goes hungry to bed by 2030, which is the United Nations goal for zero hunger by 2030. The United Arab Emirates, known as the UAE, is taking very significant steps and taking the subject very seriously. So I would like to take this opportunity, we've put together a few slides to just tell you a little bit about what we've done and what our ambitions are and what our big dreams are in the food security file. So if we could start the presentation, go to the next slide. So let me first start by explaining what is food security. Food security is when a country enables the citizens and residents that live in the country to have access to safe, sufficient, nutritious food for an active and healthy lifestyle at affordable prices at all times, including emergencies and crises. Next slide, please. Now, what are the global issues that we have? Why are we thinking of food security? So we know that the population is growing, and by 2050, there will be 10 billion people. We know that climate change is affecting the way food is being grown. Farmers are finding it more and more difficult to grow for the needs of the population growth. Water depletion, us as the UAE, we are a water scarce country. We really have to think of how we can grow food without depleting our very precious water resource. And then of course there's food loss and food waste, and this is all about our behavior around food. If we really look at how our habits around food, what we buy, how we prepare food, what we put in the bin, this really plays a huge role on our food systems. Next slide, please. So I often talk about we need to disrupt systems. One system we need to disrupt is the way we produce food, but another system we need to disrupt is how we consume food. So this is all about our habits at home. Next slide, please. So we as the UAE have been through several crises in the past, and one, let's say quite a food crisis that we went through was about 10 years ago. And we had so many lessons learned through that crisis, and many steps have been taken. And what we're very blessed with in the UAE is the foresight of our leadership. So our leadership understand what are the global challenges, what are the future challenges, how we need to build resiliency. And so I am the first minister to be appointed for food security in the UAE. And in 2017, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, our Vice President, Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai, he said to me, Mariam, I need you to make a plan. I need us to adopt technology, and I need us to advance research and development. So already in 2017, the leadership really understood that they needed a minister to be accountable and to be responsible for the food security umbrella of the country. Next slide, please. So we started off with the plan. Next slide, please. So we got together with all the stakeholders in the country, and we developed in 8 months, we developed a nation, a country plan for food security. So these are the 5 strategic directions of the plan. So to facilitate agribusiness, as many of you know, the UAE is a hub for global food trade. We have a huge volume of food coming into the country, and we serve not just our country with the 9 million people, but we actually serve a consumer market of 3 billion people because of our networks, because of our airlines, our marine infrastructure. Second, we're trying to really ramp up our domestic production using agriculture technology, or AgTech. And this is something we're going to be talking a lot more about today. Reducing food loss and food waste is a strategic direction on its own. We do realize that this is something we need to take leapfrog steps in. As you all know, a third of, or actually more than a third of the food produced globally goes to waste. And the UAE has one of the highest rates of food waste per capita per year. And this is why we're giving this a strategic direction on its own. The 4th direction is about food safety and about improving nutritional intake. This is what are the tools that we give the community to make better choices when they're buying food, when they're choosing food, preparing food. So this is nudging the community to make healthier choices when it comes to food. Then the 5th strategic direction is something we're actually really using in the last few weeks. This is how we prepare ourselves for a crisis, because as I said before, food security is about making sure you have access of food for all, even in emergency and crisis. So here are all the programs that we have activated now to ensure that when there is a blockage or when food supply is not coming in on one end, that we have plan B ready. Next slide, please. As many of you may know, in any strategy, you've got the strategic directions and you have the enablers. The enablers basically cut across all the 5 strategic directions. We're talking about a governance model. When you have a car, you could have a beautiful car, but if you don't have a driver driving it, you cannot implement the strategy. So the governance model is basically our driver that's actually implementing the strategy. So we need to have the governance model. We need to have a research and development agenda. We need to have sound data to take any decisions. You need to know what your baseline is. Human capacity, extremely important. When you're thinking of all the sectors and the whole food supply chain, you need to think of the human capacity that you need to build in the country to make an economic sector of it, to ensure that these can be run by your future generations as well. And then number 5, it's about the food movement. It's changing our culture around food. This doesn't just happen by a campaign or something. It really, this takes a lot of time because you're trying to reverse some of the bad habits that we've developed and for example, eating a lot of the wrong foods and also wasting a lot of food. Next slide, please. So this is the Emirates Food Security Council was formed, and this is basically a platform of all the stakeholders who have something to do with food security, be it food safety, be it doing permits for allowing food to enter into the country. So all the stakeholders are in this council that I'm proud to head, and it is the primary council reference in the UAE for all food affairs. So we have developed the governance model to drive our strategy, because His Highness always wants us to make sure that when we have a plan, we've got interim targets and we've got also long-term targets which we're working towards. Next slide, please. So adopting technology, what do I mean by that? How can a nation facilitate, or the government facilitate, adopting technology? It's really getting together with private sector stakeholders, academia, researchers, and trying to develop the right ecosystem to ensure we can adopt technology. I'm going to give you an example of a simple step that we did when we first started this. So we used something called the government accelerators, and this is basically a space at the Prime Minister's office, which we used. We basically invited a lot of stakeholders, so we had over 50 stakeholders. We discussed what are the challenges, what are the barriers of adopting technology? Why is the UAE not able to adopt technology at a faster pace than how it's adopting? So getting them together, putting down the challenges, we then had 100 days to overcome these challenges with all our stakeholders and come up with solutions. So the idea of this government accelerator is you go in with challenges and you come out with solutions. And His Highness gives you 100 days to do this. And we were very lucky, if we go to the next slide, that within these 100 days, he was there and he saw us launch initiatives, which are the solutions to the challenges we have. So if we go to the next slide, please. Here you see the 10 initiatives that we launched within these 100 days. We have come up with an Emirates Sustainable Agriculture label. This is a label that we're now using to basically label products and farms that are using sustainable systems. This is all part of the UAE's, let's say, steps to transform to more sustainable food systems. We also came up with the framework of agricultural finance, the agricultural loan guarantee. This is all part of having a funding mechanism and a funding support for the agtech sector. We also came up with the agtech building code. There was no agtech building code before, and which basically resulted in a very high capex cost when you wanted to build an agtech facility. But now with these codes in place, and this was also work done with the FAO, with all the relevant international organizations. We made sure we had the right codes. And now when someone wants to set up an agtech farm, these codes are available, which really decrease the capex cost somewhat up to 30%. So this was also a huge step. And unifying the agricultural license was another example. When someone wanted to set up an agtech facility, they had to apply for 3 or 4 licenses because they needed to make sure all their legal activities were encompassed within those licenses. But now we made sure that all these activities were under one license, again, decreasing capex cost and trying to facilitate agtech in the UAE. These are just some of the examples. Let's go to the next slide, please. So here is just an example of some of the, I will call them in general, these are your CEAs, your closed environment agriculture or controlled environment agriculture. So here are some examples: vertical farms, advanced robotics, aquaculture RAS systems. And it's amazing, after we really have like basically opened this new economic sector, we're really starting to see the private sector emerging with all these facilities. And believe it or not, I mean, the UAE being a water scarce country, having less than 5% arable land, we're now growing salmon, we're growing blueberries. It's really fascinating to see what technology does. And we really hope to advance this in a way to make sure that technology cost starts becoming less and less and less, which will then also help us to export this knowledge to other developing countries who can then use it. And it can basically be used in any climate. Next slide, please. So to support any technology development, you need to advance in research and development. One thing I always say here is, what are the things we have in abundance here in the UAE, in a marginal environment like the UAE? I call them the 3 S's. We've got the sun, we've got the sea, and we've got the sand. And then I often think of what are the foods that we could grow with the 3 S's. So when we think of things like algae or insect-based protein, cellular agriculture, these are all things that we really want to start pioneering in and really, let's say, raising the bar in. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Sarah. So here are just examples of some of the research and development facilities that the UAE has. We have a Seawater Innovation Center. This is basically it is exactly what I said. It's a system, a desert system that grows fish in seawater. The wastewater from that goes into halophyte plants, which are salt-loving plants. And these are salicornia. From the salicornia, you can make fuel. So you've got the fish as your protein, you've got the fuel from the halophytes, and then the water goes through a mangrove ecosystem and gets recirculated back to the fish. And it's all powered by the sun, and it's in the sand. So this is a great example of how you grow protein and fuel in a desert environment. And this has really been so successful that Etihad Airways, one of our national airlines, used a small percentage of this fuel to fuel a plane that went from Abu Dhabi to Amsterdam last year. We've also got the International Center for Bioscience and Agriculture, also known as ICBA. This is now a 20-year-old, or actually 21-year-old center that really focuses on what are the crops that you can grow in marginal environments? And we've got a speaker, Tarifa, who will be talking more about ICBA soon. The Marine Innovation Park, this is a center that we are currently under construction. It will be ready in a few months' time, so hopefully by 2021. And this center will be all about how we can really catalyze the blue economy in the UAE. So when you're talking about food security in the marine environment, aquaculture, algae, you name it, novel marine products. So this is somewhere where we're going to be inviting partners from around the world to come and do research and development in the marine environment. So we're really excited about that too. Next slide, please. And of course, for any research and development to really to catalyze, you need the funding. And the UAE has really taken steps in this, and Abu Dhabi in particular. ADIO has, or the Abu Dhabi Investment Office. We've also got a Salvatore who'll be speaking about this in the panel. They've put together a $272 million fund for really pushing research and development for food security. And just recently, $100 million was awarded to 4 global agtech companies who have set base in the UAE and who are really pushing the bar on how to develop CEAs, closed system farms in hot, arid climates like here in the UAE. Next slide, please. We go to the next slide. So I just want to show you a little bit of some of our smaller initiatives that we also have done in the last two years. So we've got the National Nutritional Guideline. This is something we did with the Ministry of Health. This is basically to give the community a guide on how they should be eating, what's a balanced meal look like, especially looking at our culture, our environment, what's available in our market. So this is a guideline for all the different age groups, and it gives just the community a reference they can use to improve their healthy diets. Next slide, please. We also developed the nutritional labeling policy. This is basically a traffic light system where on foods, I mean, not all of us are nutritionists, so it's very difficult to know, okay, if I see this level of sugar or this level of salt in a food, is this too high or too low? And this traffic light system makes it very easy for the consumer to quickly identify whether something has high salt, high sugar, high trans fats, or high calories. So just to warn them a little bit to make better choices as well. Next slide, please. The Food Tech Challenge was launched last year, and we'll be talking a little bit more about this and showing a video as well. So we really wanted to excite the youth and entrepreneurs and researchers around the world to really think of innovation and technology when it comes to food. And I'm not just talking about how we produce food, but also when we're talking about waste, when we're talking about transporting food. So really across the whole food supply chain, looking at what technologies and innovations could be put to use, could really be a game changer when it comes to more sustainable food systems. So this was launched with His Highness as well. Again, I can only accentuate, and you see him often in the pictures, the political will is so important. When the leadership is with you every step of the way, supporting you in the vision and the achievement and a national priority, it really helps the whole country push towards that direction. It gets everybody wanting to be involved because they see that the leadership is absolutely interested and behind our backs with this. So the Food Tech Challenge has been launched. We had so many, I think it was over 400 different ideas that were qualified, and we now have the finalists, and the award ceremony will take place on the 17th and 18th of November. So we invite you all to attend. It's a virtual event, so we'll be talking a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Next slide. The Food Research Platform, again, this is to try and get the people, or let's say the institutes and researchers, to communicate a little bit more and to diffuse the work that they were doing all in silos. So every university was doing their own research, every research institute was doing their own research. So this platform was developed to get them all to know what the others are doing, so that there's no duplication. And we're really trying to, as I said before, create that ecosystem to try and build up the research when it comes to food systems. Next slide, please. The UA Aquacultural Pulse was something we also came up with, trying to grow this aquaculture sector in a sustainable way, showcase to people around the world who want to maybe come and invest in aquaculture. What are the species that the UAE consume? What are the prices? What are the hatcheries that are available? The farms that are available? So just some general knowledge to really help push ag tech when it comes to farming fish sustainably. Next slide, please. And along came COVID in March, and we suddenly saw all the planes grounded, which is a very strange feeling for us. As you all know, and as many of you probably use our national airlines to transit to other countries or to actually come and spend some time here, it really was so strange for us to see all the airplanes grounded. And as you can imagine, we have a huge volume of food coming in, so perishable items coming in by plane on a daily basis. So when COVID hit, it really was, we had to activate so many programs under the strategic direction of emergency, and really make sure that the food kept flowing through the other plans that we had in place. So I have to say, during this period, first of all, I think people started to realize the importance of food security much more than they did before. Second, again, the leadership was behind us. They supported us in every way. I cannot thank them enough for all the support and all the efforts that they put behind the scenes. The private sector, brilliant. They did everything they could to try and source food from different places. And us as the government, we used the Emirates Food Security Council, which I had discussed before. And we got everyone together. We put some proactive measures in place. And it was fantastic that we already had a plan, that we already had the governance model ready. And we were able to, let's say, maneuver through the bottlenecks that happened. It was a real learning curve. And during this, everyone says, okay, when a crisis happens, you've got opportunities and you've got new ideas that come up that maybe you hadn't thought of before. But one thing was clear: we needed to boost our domestic production using ag tech. This was something we saw. Our reliance on food and net food imports into the UAE, this heavy reliance, this is a risk for us. So we really have to take steps to say, how can we boost an ag tech sector to grow some more of our needs than we are growing now, and really try and also become a hub for technology and knowledge for hot, arid, marginal environments that have the same environments that we do. So these are really our ambitions. And these were some of the changes that happened. And if you see on the next slide, you'll see during the crisis, the cabinet said, we need to form an AgTech sector development team. And this team is made up of government representatives and also the private sector representatives to really help, let's say, what are the interventions that the government needs to do to push this sector in a much more accelerated way. So this is just in a nutshell some of the, if we go to the next slide, this is just in a nutshell some of the, let's say, initiatives that we have done, some of the actions we've taken, what our ambitions are. And for us, it's all about making sure the UAE is, of course, a hub for food trade, because we are serving such a huge consumer market, being where we are with the infrastructure we have, but also to become a hub, again, for technology and knowledge. And our ambition and our vision is to be a world-leading hub in innovation-driven food security. So we strive for this transformation, and we cannot urge you enough to join this conversation. And even everybody as an individual, they have a role to play. If you really think about what you're buying, what you're putting in the bin, this is already impacting the food system that you're in. So if you can make it a policy at home to not waste any edible food, if you can make it a policy at home to say we will try and buy local, we will try and buy just the foods we need, or if there is any leftovers, we use it for another purpose. These are small things you can start in the household level. And believe me, it makes a huge impact. So thank you again to everyone that has organized this. We invite you to the award ceremony of the Food Tech Challenge. We'll be showing a video in a few minutes about it. It's on the 17th and 18th of November. So please come on board. We're extremely excited for next year's Food Systems Summit. For us, this is a pivotal platform that we're going to be using to accelerate the paths to achieve the goals we want to achieve by 2030. And I cannot accentuate more to say we must shift in the way our food systems are. We must have a paradigm shift. And I said these words yesterday as well in the Committee on World Food Security, where we're talking to a lot of thought leaders about how we can transform our food systems. This paradigm shift is so necessary, because it is not right that 690 million people are going hungry to bed, yet there's so much food being wasted. We all have a role to play. There's a lot to do. And thank you again for being here. And we've got a lineup of really great speakers and some insights on some of our farms in the UAE who are already using AgTech. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, for setting the scene so well. I think we're gonna broadcast the video at the end of the session, and here, yeah. So thank you so much. So I think that your message was really the perfect transition to the next segment of today's events. We're actually, as you said, we invited experts. We invited experts that are actually our food heroes. And as we head to the summit, we will need a strong sense of what technologies and policy works and which one do not. And overall, what we need to change the direction, to course correct. And we'll therefore be asking a series of questions to our panelists, our guests, to highlight which are the outcomes, which are the good actions that are already there. And so I think that they can give us tons of groundbreaking best practices that we can definitely share with the entire world. And by the way, I'm remembering to everyone to sign up to become a food system hero, like the ones that are representing today the UAE. So now I want to introduce you who are our guests today. The first one is Salvatore Lavallo. head of the foreign direct investment at Abu Dhabi Investment Office, which has been responsible for some very big and very exciting investment in high-tech agriculture. Then we're going to have Dr. Tariva. She was with us also during World Earth Day. So she is the Deputy Director of the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture in Dubai, one of the top research institutes in the world for this kind of agriculture. And she's very focused on growing in harsh environments. That is so much needed because everywhere in the world, also in our dear Mediterranean, we are going to face desertification in the far future. Then we're going to have Stephen Ritz. My friend Stephen Ritz is one of the most famous teachers in the world. He's an educator. He is an urban farmer, but actually he is growing kids, not only plants. So I think it's going to be very inspiring to hear what he's doing in schools. And then we're going to have Ahmet, co-founder and CEO of Vegitech, an hydroponics startup that is focused on harsh food production environments. So I would love actually to start with Ahmet, because we are entering now, let's say, a set of very good insights from the minister. We get so many insights from what the UAE is doing. I think that now is the time really to show also what the community is representing. And I want to start with you, Ahmet. So since Vegitech is also trying to disrupt the food production industry, and could you wait on this point? I think it's interesting to know, how does Vegitech meet health, affordability, and the sustainability challenge that are the biggest challenges we are facing now?
No, absolutely. And thank you so much, Your Excellency, for again inspiring us. Every time we actually get to have a session with Her Excellency, she leaves us with so many inspiring thoughts, and every time there's something new coming to the table. So really pleased, to be here today. My name is Hemant Julka. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Vegitech. The three key things which you spoke about, I'll start with sustainability, Sarah. So very, very important to understand that we're in a country where temperature, soil, and water are not very conducive for agriculture. So very important to kind of make sure that we are able to provide 12-month production of crops. So that's the first pillar that we have taken, where we have brought technology to grow crops for 12 months. When you look at the economical implication of this is adding 45% to the agriculture-related GDP of the country. So very important from an economic sustainability to provide that element in there. The second element essentially is using LED-assisted hydroponics and protected hydroponics. We are looking at conserving 90% to 95% of water. And water, as you know, is a very scarce resource in desert conditions. So this is where we are being very, very careful about the way we use water in our farms. The third thing essentially is about the soil part. So everybody knows in desert conditions, we really don't have a topsoil. So we have gone to the space where we are doing soilless agriculture, where we do active hydroponics and passive hydroponics, where we are using grow media that is not soil. And that enables us to not use pesticides. And by design, we create pesticide-free crops. So this has a huge implication on the sustainability of the health of the nation itself. So this is how we are kind of looking at sustainability. And any person from an agroeconomics perspective will tell you that the cost of growing is directly proportional to the inputs that you bring in. So if you're kind of reducing your inputs on your water, your soil, and your nutrition, then you are able to kind of compete on the affordability angle for the crops that come out of your farm. So for the perishable products, the perishable crops that come through, we are very, very competitive. So it's not that because we introduce technology, we are raising the prices of the commodities. So we are very careful about that part. And because we have our own design and research development labs, we are able to manage the entire technology stack that we bring to the table. So affordability is a very, very important aspect, but we make sure that in the perishable crop space, we are very competitive to what's happening in the market. There are particular areas like fruits and grains where we are doing a lot of active research, and we are working very closely with the Food and Water Security Office to try and bring in technologies that can at scale provide us affordability in the marketplace. So this is the active work that's actually happening. And again, Dr. Tarifa is also doing a lot of work in that space. I'm sure she will be kind of talking about that, where we are trying to look at wheat, rice, maize to be grown in the lands of UAE itself. The third angle, which we spoke about essentially is around, so we covered sustainability, we've kind of covered affordability. The third one essentially is around health. Yeah. So as Vegitech, we want to really change the perception of the modern day farmer. Yeah. It's not only important to kind of grow the crops that the society needs, but we need to make sure that we bring the right amount of nutrition to the society itself. So currently we are doing a lot of work with the university ecosystem locally as well as globally, where we are looking at the three main issues of the health of UAE. Type 2 diabetes, we've got basically childhood obesity, and third essentially is cancer. This year, we are tackling type 2 diabetes and childhood obesity by trying to figure out what is the nutrition that is required for the citizens and the residents of the country so that we can delay the onset of these typical issues, and how can the farmer bring that nutrition value to the society. So there's a lot of active work which is happening, in this space, where hopefully we'll be able to kind of bring some radical solutions which will actually assist the nation, the health of the nation, to actually become a lot more robust.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And as you mentioned, Dr. Tarifa, I think the best thing to do now is to turn to the next, Dr. Tarifa. At your research center, you look at how grow to food actually in some very, very, very challenging environments. And we want to know which are the technologies you're using to achieve that and what you can share with us, because the challenge you're facing can inspire many more people around the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, to start with the marginal environment. Again, rightly said, why marginal environment? Just because they are suffering from different bio and physical constraints that it just doesn't enable plants to grow, and it affects the life on land. We have about 1.75 billion people living in marginal environments, of which 820 of them, millions, usually they suffer from undernourished. So that's why we need to focus also on the type of crops that we need to grow there. So to start with, we were thinking of smart crops. Researchers started to think about what's the best crops to grow in such environment. So the technology is really, first of all, based on the breeding and trying to know and understand the genomics associated with those crops, in order to ensure that the breeding will give us hybrid crops that will be suitable for those environment. So we were speaking about, for example, quinoa. Quinoa is very nutritious and it can really grow on this land. And it's very important to ensure about the quality also of the nutritious factor available on those crops to ensure the healthy food system available on these lands. One of the other thing is the aqua agriculture system is, again, those areas suffer from high salinity, scarcity of water. So we need to look at the unconventional water. How can we really try to use the rejected water from the desalination to ensure that we can grow crops that are halophytic? They love the salinity and they are nutritious at the same time. And therefore we are talking about saliconia, which is really delicious. I myself tried the saliconia smoothies and saliconia burger. It took me a while to believe that, but see it to believe it. And it's there and it's really happening, and it does have an alternative values for the food system. When it comes to water, Hamid mentioned it rightly. I mean, again, we've got to be careful about how do we utilize water. So the technologies used is really smart technologies in order for us to ensure that we keep crop calculator, how much each crop consume water, so we don't over irrigate. Because again, in the case of the UAE, for example, we found out that people over irrigate dates palm. It doesn't need that much of water. There is a system where you can really use irrigation in the winter. It's different than when you will use it in the summer. So, I mean, all these technologies, again, were blended in a way where we can raise more awareness for the end users. Using sensors, for example, when it comes to the irrigation system, and ensure that there are smart technologies implemented. Big data are very important, especially when it comes to the climate modeling. We try to ensure that we have all those information to ensure that we create system for early drought monitoring system and detection system. And also, finally, drones, agri-drone are very important. And we use it for seeding, and we also use it to scan the land in order for us to produce salinity maps, which is very, very crucial and important for farmers to understand what type of soil and what type of land they are using and working with.
Thank you so much, Tarifa. We are clearly understanding that education and knowledge and science are crucial to solve these issues.
Absolutely.
And then actually, I want to jump from that to education. So I would love now to hear the voice of our friend Steven Ritz that actually brought me last year to see one of the most amazing schools set up I ever see in the world. That was in the UAE, in Dubai. And I want you, Steve, to share with us what you're doing and what's your theory of change.
So, good morning, buongiorno, and assalamu alaikum all. It's a pleasure to see you. And Dr. Tarifa, I've so enjoyed visiting your facility. It's really a marvelous place that inspires me. And I think there's two things to talk about here. The notion of fertility and fertile soils. And the most fertile soil we have in the UAE is right under our hats. It's called our children's minds. Because if we move them forward, we literally grow something greater. You know, I couldn't help but hear Her Excellency talk about the traffic light system. And quite frankly, that's brilliant because we can use that in all forms of our behavior. But a color-coded system is really what it's all about. You know, I have a very elaborate presentation that I could jump to and share, but I think I'm going to really not do that today and rather focus on what the issue is. And the issue is simply this, and I'm looking at Heman Smile. When children grow plants, that changes everything because it creates a sense of nurture. It creates a sense of compassion. It creates a sense of empathy. And if COVID has taught us one thing, it is compassion is the new curriculum. And that's really where we need to be. Because when we teach children about compassion, we teach them about everything. We teach them about empathy. The most important thing, and Sarah, you brought up the wonderful work that is happening across UAE, so many schools. I'm proud to work with ESOL Education at the Fairgreen International School and also Dunecrest American School. Two very distinct schools under one umbrella or one brand, if you will. But when you put health, wellness, and sustainability at the core of all that you are doing with children, that changes everything. Because as you saw with these little children, they love growing their plants. They love eating their plants. They understand that they need water for their plants instead of something that just comes out of the faucet that goes endlessly when they're brushing the teeth. So again, Her Excellency talked about so much, but it really talks about, I think what we really want to talk about is glocalization. And what I mean by glocalization are small systemic changes that become best procedures and best practices and best protocols that we can all do, that everyone can do. And for me, make no doubt about it, it starts in schools. And it starts in schools with wealthy children because wealthy children create, are part of a culture that creates procedures and protocols and business opportunities, but that also goes back to their home countries where there are less wealthy children. And what do we know there? That the most important school supply in the world is food, especially if you don't have it. And what has COVID taught us? COVID has taught us that, guess what? The greatest immunity builder in the world is fresh fruits and vegetables, right? Having them in our home, surrounding them, surrounding us with it and surrounding children with it is the most critical thing we can do. I'm literally in the epicenter of the crisis here in the United States. And thank God, knock wood, I have not become ill, but I believe it's because of two things. Number one, I'm digging in the soil daily, so I'm exposed to all kinds of microbials. And most importantly, because I'm eating a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. And literally because of that, my immune system is as boosted as possible. So for me, it's all about children. It's all about schools. I think when you give a child a seed and you put a seed in that child's hand, you are making them a promise that they are going to see that seed come to fruition and have a crop of epic proportions. And what does the data show us? Years and years and years of data in both marginalized communities and wealthy communities tells us that children who have access to healthy, fresh food will eat it, that students who have access to a garden on average consume 47% more fresh fruits and vegetables than those who don't. And with every burger we take out of their belly and replace with a banana, a piece of fresh fruit, a piece of citrus, some locally grown berries, we are creating a health system that moves us from healthcare to self-care. And no matter where you're from, it's no longer about where you're born or your birthplace, it's about breakfast. We can alter our lineage by changing our lunch, and we can manifest our best DNA by eating a healthy dinner. And that's what this is all about for me. And it starts with children and it starts in schools.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So, innovators, technology, futuristic solutions, how we're gonna grow game changers. And now I wanna talk with someone who's investing in game-changing things, in game-changing ideas. So Salvatore, tell us, how do we ensure as, say, financial investors and so on, that we are investing in portfolios that are good for humans and good for the planet, that are creating prosperity in a good way?
Thanks so much, Sarah, and thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. and the other panelists. So at the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, we really help any company that is expanding to or growing in Abu Dhabi. And one of our key focuses has been on agriculture and agriculture technology and food security. And this is a great question because we're always looking not at just the return on investment, but what is the impact of these projects in the ecosystem more broadly. And I think what's, as Her Excellency said, you know, it's a human problem. We have 25,000 farms in Abu Dhabi, 35,000, I believe, in the UAE. And so all of these technologies that we're talking about really affect not only all of us who are eating this food, but many, many people who are working on the farms. In the video that we saw before this session, it said there's 80% of family farmers around the world, and more than 50% of people get their food from self-sustainable farming. And so we have to look at what is this human impact. The way that we make sure that we're doing this when we are investing is by looking at the impact that these companies can have more broadly, not only in our own communities in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE, but how can the technologies that they are developing here be globally exported? How can we look at new ways of farming? How can we look at closed environment agriculture, indoor vertical farms, new cultivars like algae, as Her Excellency said? We're also even looking at how can we grow food potentially in space? How can we learn from all of these new technologies? But we also have to look at how can we transform all of these people in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, all around the world that are currently farming, and how can we give them the technologies, give them the education, put the food in their bellies, like Stephen was saying, so that the children can then grow up to make more of this research and make more of this change, feed those 10 billion people that we're going to have in 2050. So I think the best answer to your question is that at the investment office, we always are looking not only at the return of investment on the money that the government is putting into these projects, but we're always looking at what is that impact on the ecosystem. And by that, we don't only mean Abu Dhabi or the UAE, but how can these solutions that are developed here create a hub that is globally exportable and globally impacting?
Thank you so much. And here you see the responsibility of a country, the responsibility as as an entrepreneur, because taking long-term decisions, it's crucial now, more than any time in history. So thank you so much. Excellencies, colleagues, we have many people following us on different social medias, commenting and cheering us, saying thank you for the inspiring thoughts and stories we are sharing with them. Now is time, let's say, to jump into the next session, but I think that this brings us to the end of the celebration of World Food Day in the Middle East. But it's certainly, I think it's probably is not, sure, is not the end of our engagement, because this is just the starting point of a long journey that is going to take us from now until the summit, the Food Systems Summit organized by the United Nations in 2021, when we know that many voices are going to be involved, and we know that we need the supports of you as governments, of you as innovators, of you and the children's and your communities, the communities that you represent. So before we close, as the minister was mentioning, of course, we know that there's an important thing happening also next year in Dubai, and we're all excited. We all want to go there. And we know that also the World Expo in Dubai is going to be a place where we are going to talk about the future, about sustainability, about youth and empowering youth. So I don't come from Dubai, but I hope to be there with you. And I want to invite you all. I want to invite you all to check the website, see the big challenges they're launching, see how you can get engaged, and see what is going to happen next year. And not only see, take a flight and go there and be part of the conversation actively. So first of all, join the mission, candidate yourself to become one of the World Food System heroes. So check the website of the United Nations Food System Summits. Second, join the World Expo in Dubai in 2021. Is going to be a very important year. And now, before we leave, I'm going to ask to my guys, the Francesco in the back of the house, to launch a first video about the Food Tech Challenge. The time is short, so check and join the challenge. And second, a very inspiring video that is going to stimulate the appetite to take the flight and visit UAE. Thank you so much, Excellencies, to join us. And thank you so much to our food heroes to be with us today and celebrate World Food Day. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Our mission and vision in the UAE for food security is to ensure that all citizens and residents in the UAE have access to safe, nutritious, sufficient, and affordable food at all times.
Food is more than just what we eat. The ways in which we produce, process, and consume food touches every aspect of life on this planet. It is the foundation of our cultures, our economies, and our relationship with the natural world, and has the power to bring us together as families, communities, and nations.
Families and children are on the brink of famine.
But today's food systems are fragile and unequal. When they fail, there are ripple effects around the world, and the pandemic has impacted the most vulnerable among us. But we know what we need to do to get back on track. We have an opportunity to build back stronger than ever. Transforming our food systems is possible and necessary, and we can set a course to make real change for the benefit of all people. By bringing together key players from around the world and giving voice to citizens in every country. Because a strong food system means
no matter your race, no matter your class, no matter where you live,
women and men have equal opportunities to produce and access nutritious food,
which promotes human health at every step
without degrading land and water resources.
Significa una agricultura familiar.
Provide us, the community, with stability.
All year round, every month, every day of the week.
Even during a pandemic.
We are all connected, and we all have a responsibility to act. We must be bold. We must think and act differently. Transforming our food systems is the most powerful action we can take to solve our biggest problems. Because together,
we can build a just and resilient world.
A just and resilient world
where no one is left behind.
Where no one is left behind.
Where no one is left behind.
Where no one is left behind. Join us today.
Hello and good evening. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to AGRF for giving us this wonderful opportunity to share what we've been doing in line with sustaining food security in our part of the world. My name is Dr. Samuel Opoku-Jemfi, and I'm the North Africa Regional Hub Coordinator for Climate Smart Agriculture Youth Network. I'm currently based in Marrakesh, Morocco. So CSAYN is a youth-led network based in over 40 African countries. And the goal of this network is to encourage the youth to engage in commercial agriculture and to see agriculture as a means of dealing with unemployment. So some of our activities are mainly centered on the youth, especially the Africa Youth SDG training programs. And during these, we actually train the university students on peri-urban and urban agriculture. And some of these peri-urban and urban agriculture methods we teach them are simple stuff that they can do without needing huge financial backing, like for instance, backyard farming. Backyard farming, we teach them how they can actually use organic methods like planting plants like sunflower, other flowers that can actually attract other pollinators apart from bees, like ants and all, to improve pollination and also improve yield and to reduce the use of pesticides, which sort of disturbs the ecosystem for these natural pollinators. We also teach them things like vertical farming and also aquaponics. And we also give them other workshops in other areas of backyard farming. We also teach them how to actually apply things like drip irrigation, especially when it comes to urban agriculture, because Morocco has a dry climate, and especially in Marrakesh, it's really, really dry and arid. And so
Can you start now? You can start now.
All right, thank you, Francesco. Hello, everyone. So the global relay continues. It's our pleasure to take over from our colleagues. And for the next 50 minutes, we will be taking you on a journey of food. You've heard about why it's important for us to pay attention to the food we eat, and why we need to also keep an eye on transforming the system that produces, distributes, transforms, processes food that we all consume. Food is one of the few things that connects us all as a global body of humans. We all eat food. We need food to survive. We need food to thrive. We need food not just for energy, but for nourishment. And today we have a stellar lineup of experts to take you on this journey of what are the nuances and intricacies involved in the story of food, and why it's important for every single person listening to this, every single household, to understand where your food comes from and the decisions you can make to improve the food systems. And so to kick things off, I would like to welcome the chairperson of the UN Committee on Food Security, on World Food Security, Mr. Thanawat Tianson, the permanent representative of Thailand to the UN agencies in Rome. He's the vice chairperson of the 41st UN Food and Agriculture Organization Conference, chairperson, of course, of the Asia Regional Group, bureau member of the FAO Committee on Agriculture, and Mr. Tianson was the former Assistant Director General and Senior Expert on International Livestock Trade and Cooperation at Thailand's Department of Livestock Development, Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperatives. Chair, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your invitation and giving me the floor. Very good morning to all of you. I am very honored to take part in this event and contribute to this important action together with all of you today. I think today is very special because today is the World Food Day that we have to echo Happy World Food Day. And we are very happy when we start our morning with our food to make sure that all of us have healthy food. And also today is very special. It is the 75th anniversary of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO. What a better occasion to talk about our food today. The Committee on World Food Security, CFS, just convened a special event on strengthening global governance on food securities and nutrition just last week. We just finished our meeting yesterday, where we have discussed precisely this topic and the urgencies to transform the food system, the way that we producing, the way that we are processing, transporting, retailing, and consuming our foods. We are at a critical turning point for humanity. Diets and food production must radically change if we want to achieve truly sustainable development and achieve the goals we have set ourselves for 2030. More than 3 billion people cannot afford healthy diets. The problem of obesity and food-linked diseases are prevalent in almost every country, as you have seen everywhere. The COVID pandemic has made things worse. On top of that, conflict raged, resulting in millions suffering from hunger, wasting, stunning. It is simply unacceptable, and it is up to us to find solution. And we need your commitment, and we need your support. Ladies and gentlemen, we know clearly that global food production is exceeding our planetary boundaries, driving climate change, biodiversity loss, the pollution of our soil, our waters, our natures, and our own bodies. After 3 days of the meeting at CFS special event, we have got a lot of ideas, thoughts, innovation and motivation, how we can achieve. And it is clear that our food system have a lot of challenges and pleasures. That's why it is time we will have a food system summit next year that can help guide us to the transformation required of us and our food system. As we heard throughout the special event last 3 days ago, we need to work together. And the Director General of World Health Organization, WHO, said it very clearly, eloquently, the only way forward for all is together. The work that CFS does through its inclusive multi-stakeholder platform reflects the need to work together for food system transformation. The Committee on World Food Security is a unique and powerful platform if used properly, bringing together governments, UN agencies, civil societies, businesses, researchers, and others to identify efficient and scalable policy solutions for fostering safe, nutritious, and healthy food for all, while protecting the most vulnerable among us. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating human and socio-economic impacts. It has also exposed the fragilities of our food system and increased malnutrition, poor health, and vulnerabilities. If you are to shape a better future, we have to address the root causes of food insecurities, tackle environmental degradation and climate change, and ensure that those who work to provide us with food are protected and have decent work. Ladies and gentlemen, just yesterday, the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, who joined the CFS meeting, also mentioned that the CFS policy products, the voluntary guideline on food system and nutrition that we are developing, have the potential to be a powerful contribution to the success of the summit. These are some of the issues that the UN Food System Summit must tackle and address. To succeed, we need all stakeholders, governments, businesses, private sector, civil societies be involved. And CFS has a key mandate for all to come together and share experience and lesson learned, as well as to work on policy convergence. This will bring to support the summit in the month ahead. With your strong commitment, together we can achieve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jensen. So you heard it from the CFS chair on behalf of the United Nations Committee on World Food Security. This is a big call for us to understand that we can individually and collectively transform our food system. So let's begin this journey. I would like to invite, we have in our session here, a lot of smart people, I must say. But one of the smartest people I know is our next speaker. Dr. Caroline Mongera is the Global Leader of Policies and Institution for Climate Action at the Alliance for Biodiversity International and CIAT. Dr. Mongera has more than 10 years of experience as a thought leader in agriculture and climate resilience in sub-Saharan Africa. She's extremely passionate about harnessing the power of science, technology, and innovation for institutional change. Now, Dr. Mongera, you've heard the CFS chair. You've been following the conversations about the need to transform food systems, but can I take you back? Tell us the beginning of the journey. It all starts with research and innovation. So what's the larger context for a value proposition for investing in research and technologies for transforming food systems?
Okay, thank you, Debisi. First, I would like to just say that there's a recent report that has really shown why we need to invest in research. And the evidence that was released this week shows that $1 that is invested in international agricultural research generates value of $10. That's really evidence of what the value of science and research in solving the problems that we are facing today in terms of sustainable food systems. But why do we need the evidence and research? First, if we look at even what the earlier speakers talked about, the challenges that we face in the food system, policymakers need evidence on what works and how they can be able to tackle the challenges that we face. But if we look across the agricultural sector, the complexity of the challenge itself, and if you look at also, not only is the challenge very complex, but you find that it doesn't occur in isolation. Therefore, research helps to be able to address and solve these solutions. For example, we have been providing innovation to farmers to be able to address current and to be able to prepare for future challenges. But that is not only what farmers need. We also need research into how do you deliver these new technologies? How do the interventions work? So that is where research then provides value, not only to policymakers, but also to business people. If you're talking about a sustainable business and you're looking at climate change, for example, as the greatest challenge of our generation, how will you be sustainably, financially running your business if you do not tackle this challenge from a business point of view? And that's where you need the research of what you need to do, even as an investor. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mongera. We will come back to you shortly on the cross-cutting issues of resilience, etc. Now, my next speaker, I've talked about really smart people on here. He is someone whom I'm really proud of. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Apex Commodities Exchange Limited, Mr. Ayodeji Balogun. He leads a team of experts leveraging technology, innovative science, inclusive agriculture to connect agri-entrepreneurs at the small, medium enterprise scale and smallholder farmers to commodity and financial markets. Ayodeji has over 2 decades experience trading across West Africa, as well as building and scaling businesses across sub-Saharan Africa. He serves on several capital market boards and works with several institutions on food security and financing agriculture. Now, Ayo, I would like to find out from you. Now, we've discussed the research side of food systems, but between research and you, we have farmers who produce the food, but producers are at different scales. We have small, medium, large scale agribusinesses who produce food. You, of course, are somewhere in between the producers and the consumers. You've heard the saying that, people want to eliminate middlemen from food systems or from agriculture. Can you, give us an appreciation for why we need more enterprises and service providers in between the producers and the consumers of food? Ayo.
Thank you, David. It's such a pleasure. I like to introduce myself as commodity trader, particularly because I consider myself a middleman. Like you said, so when I look at an 150 kg of grains, either directly as grains or in animal protein, which typically comes from grains, the poultry and the fishery. Now, if you look at this, a household that has 6 adults need, on the average, one smallholder farmer with 1 hectare of land to feed that household. So think of it, one household with 6 adults need one farmer working a whole year to feed them with a yield of about 1,500 kg to feed 6 adults. Now the question is, how do you connect the smallholder farmer producing 500, 600 kilometers away and make that food down to you as a consumer in the small scopes that you buy, and what happens within that value chain? And that starts to give us a sense of the power of our food systems and how, when we make deliberate direct choices, it starts to have a multiplier effect on the broader economy, on the livelihoods of smallholder farmers who unfortunately are the poorest citizens we have in Africa, and also how it starts to create multiplier jobs across logistics, storage, transportation, trade, and the financial sector. Now, middlemen do three core things around, very important things around agriculture. So the first is to ensure that the farmers is well prepared to produce. So things around input distribution, knowledge, capital. The second part is by providing storage, they ensure that while most of our countries are rain-fed, meaning we produce food once in a year, they're able to store these foods across the 12 months of the year. So we have consistent supply year-round. And then they can also convert this food as commodities into capital, which is one thing that the Commodities Exchange held, that smooth transition to ensure that you can move between grains and cash interchangeably. The third part of what middlemen do, which is extremely important, is to ensure that we can connect the food finally to the markets with them producers to get it to our table. So what is needed as a sector is how do we bring transparency into this process? Thank you, DBC.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Adeji. I think that gives us a broad perspective of all that happens in between what's produced and what's consumed, not just crops, but also, of course, livestock and fisheries. Now, my next speaker follows on this line of thought. George Curator is the CEO of AGRF Africa, a service provider that links farmers to insurance products and risk mitigation solutions so that they can, of course, confidently increase their investments on the farm. As the CEO, George provides strategic and managerial leadership to achieve revenue, profit, and business growth. He also takes the lead in helping AGRF Africa achieve its mission and vision, and of course, working to ensure that climate smart practices and technologies are deployed across the agriculture production systems. Now, George, you've heard Adeji talk about all the services that happen between production and consumption. You, I think, provide services even further than that. You provide services all the way from the farm to the table. You've also heard the notion that agriculture is risky and the food sector is risky. Now, what's your take on this perception of risk? And where are the innovations that get you excited about de-risking the sector and increasing the flow of finance into the sector for prosperity for everyone? Over to you, George.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. DBC, and I appreciate this invitation and very exciting lineup here. But I mean, quickly, just think about the numbers. 65–80% of the population depending on agri, productivity in agri being the lowest in Africa. We've seen all that research, but only 10% of commercial financing is going into agriculture. It's a big deal, and it's telling, which really tells you that the perception by the lenders, is very poor of what we are doing. And yet this is a sector that's creating jobs. We need to feed the people, we need to feed the world. And therefore the challenge of access to finance and financial products is really steep. And it's something that we have to work together. But one of the things that we learn, and even as we innovate, and there are various innovations, we are creating digital solutions to overcome the payment issues. There's need to collect data to understand, what is happening on the field, so that the financials then are able to assess the risk and make decisions as to whether to lend or not. And carrying on research to develop, financial and insurance products, because, when you're dealing with climate, with pests, the amount of work that needs to be done to actually arrive at a product that then can carry risk is pretty steep, and therefore a lot of research work is required. But critically is that the actors in the value chain need to come together. And I like the previous speaker and what they're doing. You are not going to overcome agriculture risk in isolation. So AGRF Africa can develop the best insurance products. But if the farmers are not using certified seeds, they're not getting agronomy support, they don't have offtake, we have post-loss issues, we're not going to achieve. And for me, the biggest innovation, and I'm starting to see this happening, and I'm very excited about it, is that the actors are coming together, so that we are creating platforms that are enabling our farmers to produce. If you think of things like 1 Acre Fund in East Africa and them offering end-to-end services, this is where the real win is going to come. A lot of the other things have been done, collecting of data. It's there, but it's fragmented. We need to bring it together so that the lenders and the insurance people are looking at it from one box, and therefore we don't have to search every time you're doing something. And then finally is the research bit. This needs to be done over and over until we get this right. We have different climates in Africa. We cannot get a one-size-fits-all solution against climate. You know, in the West, you'll have one season. In East Africa, you've got, you know, the mountains and several seasons. You've got pests and diseases. You've got new food varieties that are coming. So again, investments in research need to be ramped up to enable us create the correct solutions. But we're on the right track, and forums like this, I think, are really exciting to what we're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, George. Thanks for neatly tying together where the challenges are, but where the opportunities and innovations are for de-risking the financial services sector, but also increasing access to services for all agripreneurs working within the agriculture and food systems. The next speaker I will invite, shall I call him Mr. Transformation? And the reason why I use that tag is when we talk of agriculture transformation, we mean a public sector enabled, private sector led process. Now this gentleman has straddled both sides of the divide in his career. He's been in the private sector. He's currently in the public sector. Akitunde Onyebode is an economist, passionate about sustainable development, finance, investment, and youth employment. He began his career as a research assistant and spent over a decade in various banking roles. He was pioneer executive secretary of the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, where he led the development of programs that provided loans to over 6 billion naira to 10,000 beneficiaries. He was most recently special advisor to the governor of Ekiti State in Nigeria on investment, trade, and innovations. He is currently the Honorable Commissioner for Finance and Economic Development. Now, Akin, when we talk of transformation, we need the public sector to provide the enabling environment. We've heard from entrepreneurs. We've heard from George, who's an entrepreneur. We've heard from Akitunde Ayodeji Balogun, who's an entrepreneur supporting other entrepreneurs. We know that the SME sector or the MSME sector, even the large-scale sector in the agribusiness or agri-food sector, requires the enabling environment for the entire food system to thrive. Now, as someone who is responsible for providing this enabling environment, could you give us an appreciation for how you're bringing your private sector background and experience to increasing and improving the enabling environment for entrepreneurs? Over to you, Aki.
Thanks, DBC. First, I must apologize for the quality of my internet connection, so I might be a bit patchy. I think I'll make this very quick. For us, it's all about productivity uplifts, and it's essentially how do we develop the productivity uplifts that our farmers need to be more profitable. So it's focusing on our investments in irrigation and ensuring that we can enable all-season farming. It's ensuring that we can provide the storage infrastructure that allows, that reduces the loss of produce, and ultimately
okay, I think we have a technical challenge with Akin's connection.
Ensuring that we improve the quality of farm and that we can get inputs into farms cheaply, and we can also efficiently move the outputs from farms. So
Okay. We seem to be having some connection challenges with Akin. If we can improve the quality of the connection, we will come back to him because he has a lot to say about this enabling environment. And I think it's important for us to hear from someone who is working in the public sector charged with providing this enabling environment for shared prosperity. In the meantime, we've talked about food from research through production, processing, distribution. We've looked at the finance, research, risks, perspectives. We touched briefly on the policy enabling environment. Now it comes to the table. Our next speaker is uniquely placed to talk to us about food, not crops, but food. What ends up on your plate and what goes into your mouth, hopefully. Chef Mokadi Swang has worked in the food industry for more than 17 years. She is a self-taught chef. In 2000, she acquired further culinary training in New York at Peter Kump Cooking School and the New School. And upon her return to South Africa, Woolworths snatched her up and she worked as a FoodWorks chef. She is the creative director and head chef for Lotcha Home Foods, a food company she started with 2 other partners. The focus of the company is to develop food products based on African recipes. She's of course also a member of the Chef's Manifesto. Chef Mokadi, it is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Debisi. Really is a pleasure for me to be here.
Great having you. Now, can you tell us, what is it? What's the story about the food we eat, and why is it important that we invest in transforming or be involved in the process of transforming the food systems?
Well, basically, what we need right now as the world is to eat, especially Africa, is to eat more diverse foods. Diversity in our food system is important not only for accessing nutrient-dense foods, but for also strengthening and healing the arable land that we have here in Africa. We need to focus more on quality foods instead of quantity. And calories can be empty calories. So quantity of foods is not necessarily good for us, but the quality of the food that we're eating is what we need right now. Obviously, COVID exposed the breakages in the food system. And what happened is that because a lot of African countries don't grow their own foods and they depend on imports, when lockdown happened, a lot of people went hungry because of that. We as Africans need to focus on eating good food, and we need to focus on local food production, increasing biodiversity by bringing back forgotten indigenous crops back into the food system. These crops, are good for the planet, and it's obviously crops that are nutrient dense because the whole world knows about these crops, except for us because we don't grow these crops anymore. We need to go back to that, to bring back biodiversity into the soil and into our food and into our plates. Another thing that we need to focus on as Africans going forward and healing our plate is the food processing companies that are operating in the continent. They need to focus on creating healthy foods that nourish and build us as Africans and not create diseases. They need to stop dumping their foods, the foods that the West doesn't want, all their cheap foods to us, and creating the obesities and the malnourishment that we as Africans suffer. So we as Africans really need to make sure that these companies are responsible and are held accountable, because only through accountability can they change and focus on health and not so much on profits. So us as Africans, we really need to look at our plate and be objective and see how we are going to heal ourselves and how we're going to heal our plates. We need to, again, incorporate more of our own foods that the rest of the world knows about, and we're not focusing on. So we need to go back to the drawing board as Africans and really see and say, what is it that we are good at? We've got so much arable land that is fertile, that is healthy, that can help us and feed us. We need to go back to that. Thank you. And also for anyone interested in accessing these diverse ingredients and diverse recipes, you can go onto our Chef's Manifesto website, which is the www.sdg2advocacyhub.org. There you'll find amazing recipes, awesome ingredients that you can play around with recipes that are awesome and they're easily accessible. So good food for all is important today on World Food Day. Good food includes nutrition, includes life-giving ingredients and life-giving food, because there's no point in eating when the same food is the one that's killing us.
Thank you very much, Chef Mukhadi. I'd like to thank you for an excellent call for people to invest in diversifying their diets, improve their curiosity around the food they eat, be more conscious about what they eat, yes, and the power in diets to improve nutrition and health. I'd like to bring us, back to Akin Oyebode if he is still there. Akin, are you there? Okay. Since Akin is not here, or we're still having technical challenges. Now, I'd like to ask His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn to help me out before I bring him on a second time for closing remarks. Your Excellency, you were Prime Minister of Ethiopia. I want to do a full introduction before this, but I wanted to prime you to please provide comments around the policy enabling environment for private enterprise in the agri-food sector. Now, His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn is currently the board chair of AGRA and the AGRF Partners Group. As I mentioned earlier, he was the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, who served from August 2012 until April 2018. After leaving office, he co-founded and is the chairperson of Haile Mariam and Roman Foundation that focuses on mother and child healthcare, including the prevention of non-communicable diseases, nutrition, and climate-smart agriculture. He also serves as board member and chairperson of Tourism Ethiopia, the International Crisis Group, the Brenthurst Foundation, and the Global Steering Committee for the Campaign for Nature. I'd like to call him my chair. You know, there's a bit of pride in me welcoming you to provide this context, Your Excellency. As Prime Minister, when you were Prime Minister, you know, what were the things you did leading governments to provide that enabling environment for the private sector in the agri-food sector? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Devisi. First of all, I would like to say Happy World Food Day. I think, first of all, agriculture is a very complex engagement. You have to engage all sectors that should produce, process, and market, as well as work on the nutritional aspect of food. And we have to look into agriculture as a food system, not only producing crops. The main problem we had earlier is we work on productivity increment and increase our produce, but we were not so much concerned about the nutritional aspect of what we produce. But when we talk about enabling the environment for the private sector, actually, first of all, I think we shouldn't somehow neglect our smallholder farmers, because I consider them as one of the private engagement, because it is a family production, and something which my colleague was mentioning, that 65 to 70–80% of our people are engaged in agriculture, and their livelihood is based in producing agricultural food. So we need to support our smallholder farmers as a private sector, but that's not enough. I'm very much biased towards smallholder farmers, as you know, but it's not complete. So we need to have a private sector engagement on small, medium, and even micro engagement, and even including the large-scale farmers. So this needs, a policy environment that helps them to produce in an effective and efficient manner. You need to have a land allocation and land tenure system, which should be suitable for them. And in many African countries, this is not so much suitable, and government has to engage in and make land available for these guys. Sometimes, depending on the country policy, I think this is an important issue. Even when land is privately owned, then you have to facilitate that transaction very well. Otherwise, if you have so much bureaucracy in it, that will be difficult. The second issue is financing, which is, as my colleague mentioned, financing is one of the deadlocks in African agriculture, both for smallholder farmers as well as for small and medium as well as large farming. So, our banks are not ready to engage in facilitating loans to private sector agricultural produce. And Ethiopia has made such a very well developed development bank, which focuses on agriculture and gives some kind of incentives to the private sector with low cost financing. The other one is, the whole value chain of agriculture is very complex. You need to have the logistics in place, and the government should work on infrastructure, which is one of the deficits in our countries in Africa. So we need to engage in making rural areas accessible to agricultural produce to be transported and marketed. I heard one of my colleagues in this forum talking about commodity exchange. Ethiopia has a very good commodity exchange system where the market has to be efficient, and the asymmetry of information has to be closed. So I think there are a number of ways that you can mention that the private sector can engage and produce in an efficient and effective manner, and there is a lot to be done.
Thank you very much, Chair. That was great. We are receiving questions from the social media platform, and we will field a few of them if we depending on how much time we have. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for providing that context. And you are right. The public policy framework encompasses the entire gamut. We need research data to underpin policy, and so Caroline's work is relevant to informing public policy decisions. We also need public policy to provide that enabling environment, for the private sector to move forward, for people like George Courier and those working in the financial services sector, for Ayodeji and the people working in the aggregation processing sector. And we have seen, success. I remember in my former role, we would talk about the role of research in transforming the white pea bean in Ethiopia. The white pea bean moved from a crop that was valued at about $5 to $6 million a year to over $200 million, within a decade. And why? And that was because farmers were connected to markets in Europe through research. Research enabled the farmers to improve productivity. And of course, you had the aggregators who helped with the aggregation, quality control, processing, exports, and trade. And of course, public policy also enables trade within countries, between countries, and around the world. This year, we saw the inauguration of the Africa Commodities Continental Free Trade Area that is based in Ghana. And we saw the handover ceremony between the government of Ghana and the African Union. And we think trade will provide that stimulus, that added stimulus for African economies to trade further with themselves and better and more efficiently with the rest of the world. Now, I would like to invite all speakers to kindly turn on their cameras. I have a couple of questions for you as we bring our session to a close. My first question is, how are food systems specific to Africa? What aspects of the food systems are specific to Africa that separates it from the rest of the world? Is there anything about African food systems that is unique? And if not, can we then say transforming food systems is not a local question or a local challenge, but it's a global challenge that every single individual should be involved in?
I love that, DBC.
Okay, Ayo.
I think one word is fragmentation, and the fact that our poorest populations are farming and the food sustainability, we have to think of it in an inclusive manner. So it's that tension between efficiency and inclusivity.
Okay, so there is that tension. There is that tension. Dr. Mongera, from your experience working in an international research organization, do you have any perspectives on this? Is there anything specific to Africa around food systems?
Yeah, so for that question, DBC, I would say that transforming the food systems is a global challenge, but with local solutions. So very specific solutions for Africa. For example, what we see, and what I can give an example of the alliance where I work, is that we are trying to address the challenges that are very specific to Africa. Like what we are releasing now in terms of varieties of beans, as an example, is that we are looking at how do we have varieties that can be able to withstand short duration of the seasons. So we have released, for example, a variety that can be able to mature in between 75 to 85 days, while at the same time that variety has been biofortified, that is enriched with zinc and iron, because we find these are some of the deficiencies that we find in the population that we need to address. But also looking at beans being a woman crop, where we want to find also, can it be more marketable? Can it be able to have better cooking ability? So we really need to have farmer-centric innovations. And that means we have to go local to address the global challenge of the food systems.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mongera. Chef Itswang, now I have a question here for you. How can young people chart a career for themselves as chefs in Africa? What's the career path?
Well, first of all, you need passion to do this work, because it's a lot of work. You know, people always think being a chef is easy, just cooking in the kitchen, but it takes more than just that. So you need passion. You need to understand your role in that system. You really need to understand the role of chefs in the system. The role of chefs in the system is not just about cooking, but it's also about feeding and encouraging people to eat healthy food that brings life. And also it's about showcasing food that is grown within your community. So we want to, as chefs, what we do is we focus on bringing to life the food that the farmers grow, the food that the companies or whoever processors make. So as a chef, it's your responsibility to bring those things to life. So South Africa, I know I'm from South Africa, there's a lot of chef schools here. I'm not sure about the rest of the continent, but what's happened now is that we need, as South African, as Africans, we need more schools that focus, that are African-centric, that are not just based on French cooking, because we've got so much to give as Africans to the world. And our food is so important. And for us to bring it to the fore as chefs, we need all players involved. So to be a chef, you need to have more passion than just cooking. You need to see yourself as what do they call it? As somebody who's basically bringing in, who's focusing and also shining the spotlight on food in your community. So it's a big responsibility, and I think it's important for people to take being a chef as that responsibility, because as Africans, we really need to change our food systems, and we really need to have everybody involved, especially the chefs, because we get everyone to eat all sorts of things. So if the chef says it's great, everybody gets on it. So you know, to be a chef, you need passion, but you also need to understand your role in the whole food system, so you're more effective.
Thank you very much, Chef Mukhadi. We really need to get the next generation, the young generation involved. We need younger chefs. We need the youth involved in private enterprise. We need the youth involved in public policy. It's not just about business. When we talk about opportunities for the next generation, for the youth, we need them in government. We need them in the boardroom. We need them at the, what would you call the workstation, the kitchen station, Chef Mukhadi?
Of course, it's the kitchen station.
Yes, we need them. We need them all in the kitchen stations. We need them to be curious about the food that they consume. We need them to be creative. And we hope that through the Chef's Manifesto, you can collectively show the way. We think there's a lot of information that can be put out there on information and how people can get engaged in the food that they consume. Now, to bring this all home, I would like to call on my chair, His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn, to provide closing remarks and give a call. You know, Your Excellency, what is the call to Africans and for the rest of the world on food systems? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, WC. As you can see, everyone has a stake in food systems. You know, we have very specialized people who are presenting today. So you can see it's a very diverse and that needs, you know, to have every African to get involved in the food systems summit. You know, you have to understand what the food system is all about. So I call upon all of us Africans to take part in the coming food systems summit. You know, food systems present a complex challenge which calls for a systematic approach to problem solving, and we have a number of problems that has to be addressed. So we need a summit. So everybody has to be part of that summit. Again, this approach will require us to rethink food system governance, not only that, policy making, and also implementation into the play. We can create a food system that delivers sufficient and nutritious food that does not impact the environment, our environment negatively. This should be positively impacting. And our past mistake is we are making our environment to degrade, and that has to be addressed. And we have to create a sustainable and dignified jobs, especially for our youth. And I'm very happy that there is a youth network involved in this discussion today, an African Youth Network, which is a very essential platform to bring our young people into agriculture and food systems. So that is also a very important aspect. And we have to have a shared prosperity for Africa. And without the food system in a proper sense, then I think we cannot have a sustainable prosperity in our continent. As latecomers in the economic ladder, I think Africa has huge opportunity to engage in. And I think we should be at the forefront in the food summit at this time. So everybody on this planet has a stake in food systems, and we must all get involved. You have the power to make changes to the food you consume. As our chef has said just now, we have our African way, our homegrown food, nutritious food system. So we need to, to air out and bring our African cuisine into play. The decisions you make can improve your health, improve the environment, and create sustainable jobs and increase prosperity in Africa. So let's work together to create a food system that can nourish people, the planet, and foster prosperity. This is a time for change, and the change is coming, and it's now. So let's be engaged and let's be part of this global food system summit.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. This is great. We thank Your Excellency and all our speakers for an engaging session. For everybody else out there, we encourage you to sign up as a food systems hero. Have your voice heard. Participate or get involved in the food systems summit by going to the website www.un.org/foodsystems.
Oh my God, I love Henry. No, we don't. Okay.
Okay.
Find pathways to transform our food systems. And we've got to do it quickly because they make so much difference to how we live, how healthy we are, and how well we perform. Join the conversation.
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 Join us today. Join the Food System Summit. Join the conversation.
We need global engagement and action for inclusive and sustainable food systems. I urge you to join the conversation.
Buongiorno a tutti e a tutte. È un onore nella giornata mondiale dell'alimentazione essere con voi in questa iniziativa delle Nazioni Unite. Oggi più che mai il nostro compito è quello di prenderci cura di chi ha fame, di chi è malato, di chi uscirà dalla pandemia ancora più fragile di come c'è entrato. Ci troviamo ad affrontare una prospettiva del tutto nuova, alla quale dobbiamo far fronte con rapidità, non solo in Italia ma in tutto il mondo. All'emergenza sanitaria globale si è aggiunta inevitabilmente l'emergenza alimentare. Questa crisi sta di fatto incidendo pesantemente sulla vita di tante famiglie, con pesanti effetti economici e sociali. Secondo i dati della Banca Mondiale, ci sono 100 milioni di poveri in più. Solo in Europa si sono persi 10 milioni di posti di lavoro. A queste persone e a chi già soffriva di queste condizioni anche prima del Covid, abbiamo il dovere di offrire soluzioni concrete, immediate, rigorose e dignitose. Avendo ben presente anche nel riparto delle risorse o degli aiuti prossimi e futuri che ogni territorio ha una sua specificità economica e sociale. Mettere in stretta connessione la filiera della solidarietà e del welfare, quella dell'agroalimentare, della distribuzione e quella istituzionale. È ciò che l'emergenza richiede. Del resto, questa giornata si celebra nella data di fondazione della FAO, che con l'enorme impegno profuso da decenni si occupa di accrescere i livelli di nutrizione e delle emergenze alimentari, oggi così aggravate. Porre fine alla fame, raggiungere la sicurezza alimentare, migliorare la nutrizione e promuovere un'agricoltura sostenibile è un obiettivo dell'Agenda 2030, che racchiude in sé una parte fondamentale delle sfide che abbiamo davanti. Tutti parlano di sostenibilità, pochi la realizzano concretamente ogni giorno. Nell'impegno al Ministero ho chiesto di mettere al centro questa responsabilità, promuovendo le buone pratiche, indirizzando gli aiuti verso un nuovo modello di sviluppo, verso scelte inclusive e davvero rispettose dell'ambiente. E voglio fare un plauso al programma di formazione realizzato Future Food Institute, proprio con la FAO, per nuove figure professionali che si impegnano nella mitigazione dei cambiamenti climatici a partire dal settore agroalimentare. Sono aspetti essenziali per sostenere la filiera del cibo, ma anche lo sviluppo sociale. perché dobbiamo impegnarci per avere cura di tutti, senza lasciare indietro nessuno. Per questo il diritto al cibo per tutti, sano e di qualità, deve essere punto prioritario nell'agenda di governo del nostro Paese. Talmente importante che appena usciti da questa situazione, a mio parere, non potremo più rinviare una riflessione seria e collettiva per metterlo a valore anche nella nostra Costituzione. Sì, proprio là, accanto al lavoro e alla salute, vicino di banco del sacrosanto diritto all'essere trattati con senso di umanità. Non può mancare il diritto al cibo per tutti. Ricordarlo oggi non è solo importante, ma a mio avviso assolutamente necessario. Grazie a tutti e a tutte e buon lavoro.
My name is Sabrina Alba. I'm a model philanthropist. I'm an advocate on issues of agriculture and food security and rural women's and girls' equality. But most recently, I've been given the opportunity to live out, I guess, my activism dreams by being honored with the position of Goodwill Ambassador for the International Fund for Agriculture, IFAD, whose work, obviously, I am extremely proud of. Sarah, it is so good to be here with you today.
And my name is Sarah Mbagobunu. I am IFAD, the International Fund for Agriculture's Regional Director for East and Southern Africa, based out of Rome.
We know that hunger is rising in some countries, and some of the most vulnerable people, of course, are smallholder farmers in rural communities across Africa, Asia, the Middle East, who both struggle to grow enough food and as well struggle economically when there's economic instability. So I guess my question is, how are rural farmers being impacted right now due to the pandemic? What do people need to know about their plight? But I guess also, what do people need to know about their potential as well? I don't want to leave that out.
Sustainable recovery and enhanced resilience is basically part of IFAD's core work. Now, you mentioned Africa and specifically in East and Southern Africa, but just looking right across, it's relevant for everything. In fact, the World Bank figures tell us that this is a recession in the region, for the first time in 25 years, and we can actually be seeing negative growth of about 5%. Basically, the pandemic has cost the region roughly around 79 billion in output losses. So, those figures are astronomical. We see households' welfares impacted, purchasing power has been completely eroded. Very dramatically, in some instances 7 to 14%. We see a huge increase in poverty because of the decline in many economies. We have seen an actual reduction between 2.6 and 7% of agricultural production alone, and there's 73 million people at risk of food insecurity. Unfortunately, because of the lockdown and fear of contaminating and getting the virus, many governments, if I just deep down in East Africa, have decided to sort of close borders in terms of containing the pandemic. But essentially what that does, the protectionism and the export bans actually have a knock-on effect on food. So this is really, 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 really difficult. And then coupled with the fact that, most countries now don't have the resources to import food. So there's that gap. This food is not coming in from rural areas. They can't import food. So you have a double whammy. Sabrina, how did you sort of get into all of this? Where's your passion coming from?
So when I'm looking at issues like the ones that IFAD is
What a great session from the AGRF. Thank you so much for staying tuned.
I would first like to introduce myself. My name is Modani Njiru, and I'm a young African communicator working for CGIAR, based at the International Livestock Research Institute in Nairobi, Kenya. I am also honored to introduce our host, Dr. Kanayo Nwanzi, CGIAR Special Representative to the UN Food Systems Summit.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Muthoni.
Let's get started. Distinguished guests, delegates, valued partners, the hundreds of people online watching from across Africa and the world today. Hello, and welcome to the 2020 CGIAR virtual tours of the coolest African food research centers. In this session, we will transport you around the African continent to check out how the global CGIAR research network is helping to transform African food systems through science to transform food, land, water systems in a climate crisis. We will start here in Nairobi. Where we will visit 2 labs that are undertaking groundbreaking research on food and livestock. From East Africa, we will move to Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa. Here, we will see farmers who are using low-cost, climate-smart technologies to adapt local farming systems to the challenges of today. We will then meet with young farmer entrepreneurs in Nigeria venturing into farming as a business. We will finish with an interactive session based on your questions. So please send your questions through Facebook and Twitter. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our renowned guest, Dr. Kanayo Nwanzi, to set the stage on the important role the CGIAR is playing in addressing Africa's food system challenges. A Nigerian national, Nwanzi has a strong record as an advocate and leader of change and a keen understanding of the complexities of development issues. He has over 40 years of experience across 3 continents in poverty reduction through agriculture and rural development and research. He was the president of the International Fund of the Agriculture Development, prior to which he worked across a number of CGIA research centers. We appreciate your presence. Dr. Kanayo, please, welcome. Sorry, sir, you're on mute.
Thank you, Muthoni. I am really excited to be your host today on this journey across Africa. To see the importance of research in supporting the sustainable transformation of food systems. Transforming food systems is crucial if we want to achieve SDG 2, zero hunger. According to the 2020 SOFI report, almost a staggering 690 million people were hungry in 2019. An additional 130 million could become hungry in the near future as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. Agricultural research is the starting point of this transformation, which is what CGIAR does, and not just in Africa, but in over 100 countries around the world. Agricultural research is much more than farming and includes a wide range of activities. We work in many different ways, from working in the lab to becoming a farmer, to adding value to crops and livestock products, to working with governments and partners, including the private sector. Partnerships are the core of CGIAR's work. Over the last 50 years, CGIAR, the largest publicly funded agricultural research network with a global presence across 4 continents, 10,000 staff from 135 nationalities, and a local presence of 70 countries. Our partnerships with and through policymakers, researchers, academics, investors, and donors, and public and private companies and NGOs have enabled us to harness knowledge from a range of actors in designing innovative solutions deploying them faster on a larger scale and at a reduced cost, thus reaching those who need them the most. Food systems encompass a whole range of activities from production, processing, marketing, to the science of improving animal breeds and crops, as well as protecting them against pests and diseases. Today, we'll take a tour around Africa and see how CGIAR research is supporting transformation of African food systems in different ways. Now, let me tell you something that is really exciting. African food systems are changing. They are changing from traditional subsistence practices to economically viable farming using modern high tech. They are diverse and highly nutritious, and we need to ensure we build upon them. They offer limitless opportunities for everyone, particularly youth, to feed populations, generate wealth, create jobs, and in building healthy and resilient food systems that are essential in addressing the challenges we face today, particularly COVID-19 and climate change. These virtual tours that we have prepared for you today will showcase CGI efforts in contributing to the United Nations Food Systems Summit action tracks, particularly action track number 1, which is ensuring access to safe and nutritious food for all, and action track number 5, building resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks, and stress. Now let me hand you back to Muthoni to take us on the first tour. Muthoni, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nwanzi. Are you guys ready for the tour? We're about to start here in Nairobi, Kenya. We're going to visit 2 labs who are undertaking groundbreaking research on food and livestock, genetics, soils, and animal health disease. Our first tour is at the International Livestock Research Institute with the most advanced bioscience labs in Africa, working to ensure healthy food and livestock. These world-class laboratories are also playing an important role in supporting the fight against COVID-19.
Welcome to the International Livestock Research Institute, Nairobi, Kenya. Hello, I am Wihaki, a communications officer at ILRI, where we host 10 international institutions working on all aspects of food systems in the continent. This campus is a world-class research facility, complete with lab testing and research facilities used to do lots of cool science that is helping improve food security in Africa. Here we improve crops and livestock breeds and develop new vaccines for livestock. Let's go on a tour. I want to introduce you to Catherine, a molecular breeder and a plant scientist.
Thank you, Mihaki. Welcome to our research facilities, where we use biosciences to address some of the key agricultural constraints and foster the next generation of African scientists. The facilities we have here allow scientists from across the continent to use science tools to solve some of the key agricultural challenges facing crop and livestock production today. The facilities we have here allow us to carry out food science and nutrition analysis for assessment of nutritional quality. We combine nutrition analysis, plant breeding, and food processing to develop nutritious foods for those who need them the most. Let me introduce you to one of our young next generation scientists, Mukani Moyo.
Hi, my name is Mukani Moyo. I'm a food chemist at the International Potato Center's Food and Nutritional Evaluation Laboratory here at the ILRI campus. We evaluate the nutritional and food safety aspects of different crops and food products. Welcome.
Thank you. Like this sweet potato?
Yes, this is an orange fleshed sweet potato, very high in vitamin A content. What we do here is analyze the exact amounts of vitamin A in different orange fleshed sweet potato varieties.
But why is vitamin A important?
Malnutrition is a big challenge globally. especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where almost 50% of children under 5 years of age are affected by preventable blindness and childhood stunting due to lack of vitamin A in their diets. So this orange flesh sweet potato is part of the solution.
How cool is that? I love science. Now let's visit JB in one of the DNA sequencing labs. I heard you trained Mokani Moyo in bioinformatics. Is that true?
Yes, that is. You know, having good equipment like this goes hand in hand with having the human capacity to operate it and to innovate with it. So that's why we are very proud at ILRI that we are training the next generation of African scientists. We are equipping them with the tools to tackle the research questions of the day.
That's fascinating. Now let's meet some other scientists working on animal diseases. Bernard, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how animal and human health is linked?
Thanks, Mwihaki. My name is Bernard Bett. I work here at ILRI as a scientist. So one of ILRI's key research area is that on the interaction between animals, people, and the environment, what we call One Health. We have been using this approach to study global health challenges like COVID. This is quite important in Africa, where a majority of the people derive their livelihoods, income from the environment. And so that enhances this interaction which we are talking about, and hence enhances disease transfer from animals to people.
This is Sam. Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here.
Hi, Mwihaki. My name is Samuel Oyola. I'm a senior scientist here at ILRI. I specialize on molecular biology and genomics. We work on a number of diseases. So these diseases are diseases that affect African livestock. And these livestock are crucial for the food security and livelihood in Africa. So at the moment, what is going on here is that the people are testing COVID-19. When COVID-19 struck, the government of Kenya asked ILRI to support with the disease testing. And because we had the facilities and the expertise, we were able to transform part of our lab to be testing COVID-19.
These are just a few examples of what we are doing here at the ILRI campus. A lab may not be the first thing that comes to mind when you think about the food that you have on your plate, but these research and testing facilities help ensure that food is farmed sustainably, is safe to eat, and is nutritious. These labs make it possible for us to do this in Africa. Thank you for joining me on this tour. Find out how cool science is helping improve food systems on our website www.ilri.org.
Oh, what an amazing tour. It's so great to see these amazing labs within our continent. Now, if you have any questions, please make sure you put them in on Facebook and Twitter so that we can hear from you. Now let's move across town to the C4ECRAF labs, where we'll visit the Soil and African Orphan Crops Consortium labs. We will also learn how the C4ECRAF lab is working with countries to reduce land degradation.
Welcome to C4ECRAF in Nairobi, Kenya. We aim to make landscapes more resilient for people and nature by providing evidence-based solutions to some of the world's most pressing challenges. We harness the multiple benefits trees provide for agriculture, livelihoods, resilience, and the future of our planet. Today, we'll take you on a tour of some of our labs to show you how our scientists are helping to restore ecosystem functions to improve food security and livelihoods in Africa. And what have we got here? Soil. Meet Dr. Lee Ann Winowiki, who heads our soil research at C4ECRAF. Lee, why is soil so important?
Healthy soil is the foundation for building sustainable food systems. It provides more services than any other substance on land. Soil is also incredibly diverse. However, we often do not acknowledge this diversity in how we manage our soils. At C4ECRAF, we have pioneered a rapid, accurate, and cost-efficient technology to assess the diversity of soil properties using light. Soil spectroscopy has enabled scientists, land managers, and farmers to better understand our soils across landscapes. In addition, we are able to create modern soil maps that reflect the spatial pattern of soil functional properties that are key for informing and prioritizing sustainable soil and agricultural management.
And now from the Soil Lab, we come to the African Orphan Crops Consortium Laboratory. Here we meet Dr. Prasad Hendra, the lab manager. Prasad, can you tell us why this lab is very important for food security in Africa?
Malnutrition is a widespread phenomenon across African nations that can be addressed by diversifying African food systems through an array of nutritious, non-mainstream local crops. To support this, the African Orphan Crops Consortium, or the AOCC, is using DNA-enabled method to improve production of the non-mainstream orphan crops. These orphan crops are often, because they are neglected by the mainstream scientific community, they are under-researched, underfunded, but they are inherently rich in nutrition, they are locally adopted and culturally aligned. Biologies of many of these orphan crops are also difficult to handle, which can be then tackled by also using the DNA-based methods. Here, what you see is the next generation DNA sequencer that can sequence 300 human genomes in a span of 7 days. The DNA sequences read by this machine for all the 101 African orphan crops can further be used to study different traits and associate these traits such as drought tolerance, disease tolerance, pest tolerance, and which can be then used to make these already nutritious crops high yielding and adapted to the changing climate scenario.
And now we meet Dr. Susan Chomba, who heads our EU-funded Regreening Africa project that aims to restore 1 million hectares of degraded land across 8 countries. Susan, why must we invest in land restoration in Africa?
We must invest in land restoration in Africa because the problem is massive. Approximately 65% of agricultural land in Africa is degraded. This undermines the potential for that land to be able to produce enough food for its people. It also undermines the ability of the governments in the African countries to be able to meet the goals of food and nutritional security. Therefore, investing in land restoration is a priority because it not only provides enough food for the people, but also it provides other benefits such as carbon sequestration, hydrological cycles, as well as multiple biodiversity functions. When we make landscapes resilient for people and nature, there will be less hunger. We must invest in food systems to make this happen.
Oh, what an amazing video from my colleagues at C4ICRAF. Thanks, guys. Now, let's move over to Cote d'Ivoire, where we'll have a glimpse at the Africa Rice Gene Bank, where they have the largest collection of Africa rice being conserved. Then we'll visit farmer fields to learn from a young expert about a low-cost, climate-smart solution to help rice farmers fight drought and flooding.
Welcome to Africa Rice Center. Africa Rice conserves the largest collection of African rice in its gene bank. This is one of the 11 world-class gene banks of CGIAR. Africa Rice scientists and partners use the genetic diversity to develop popular rice varieties like Nerica and Arica that are naturally adapted to African conditions.
Africa Rice is also helping farmers fight climate change
through low-cost, farmer-friendly solutions. One such solution is Smart Valleys.
Welcome to the Smart Valley site of Mbe. My name is Elliot Dosiovo. I'm climate change scientist for agriculture at Africa Rice Center. Farmers were suffering a lot from the impact of climate change here. They often sow rice in June, but in July, they often face a long dry spell, while in September, the whole valley was flooded.
Before, we were producing rice only once a year, and sometimes when there is drought, when there is flooding, we have very low yields. During the dry season, we were not doing anything and our income was so low.
Since 2018, Africa Rice and the farmers engaged in this very exciting venture of Smart Valleys approach implementation. In short, the Smart Valley approach is a participatory approach for land and water development. It is now massively adopted by farmers in several African countries. We produce with farmers a very simple inland valley development plan and implement it. And we could see here around the farmer's field the drainage canal and how water is flowing in the drainage canal. We could see here the irrigation canal. The importance of the drainage canal is that it helps farmers to drain the fields when the water level is too high. And the importance of the irrigation canal is that it helps the farmer to irrigate the field when the rice plant needs water. Without these infrastructures, the whole valley will be flooded by now. Since 2018, when farmers started using the Smart Valleys approach, the yield and income more than doubled for 3 reasons mainly. First, farmers are no more vulnerable to droughts and floods, and then they are more resilient to climate change. Second, when farmers apply fertilizer in the fields, it benefits to the rice plants and the yield is good. Lastly, farmers invest more in agricultural production, and this actually contributes to increase the income.
Monsieur Koulibaly Isaka, les producteurs gagnent plus
and
de
all
gains.
the farmers are now happy, including me. Some were able actually to purchase motorbikes, others were able to build a house. Now they are taking better care of their family. They can go to hospital when they are sick. We could see here the rice plants. This is Aurelis's rice variety. Green. It's growing very well because it has enough water to grow. It has enough nutrients to grow. And this is actually the essence of the Smart Valley approach.
Now we are producing vegetable and legume during the dry season. We can eat vegetable and legume and improve our nutrition. We can sell them to have money and start rice production with a small investment in terms of tillage, fertilizer application, and this really contributed to improve our conditions. Now with the Smart Valley approach, we are earning money.
The Smart Valley approach is applied on the whole landscape using farmers' knowledge and only local materials. This is what makes the Smart Valley approach a sustainable approach, and we can see here how it contributes to improve the yields, how it contributes actually to preserve the soil, how it contributes to preserve the ecosystem services. The Smart Valley approach is quite a very simple approach, and key message is that farmers are the key elements, the key agent points for the implementation of the approach.
What an amazing video. I hope you look at your bowl of rice differently the next time you have some. Now, finally, we go to Nigeria to visit the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, IITA, which works with young entrepreneurs and secondary school-aged children to encourage them to go into agriculture to start their own businesses. We also take a look at how IITA's research for the past 50 years is helping transform African agriculture.
I'm Mercy, and I'm a researcher with CGIAR. I work with International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, and I work for a project called the Basics Project. So let's meet you.
Hi, my name is Omi. Hi, my name is Ola. Hi, my name is Abi.
Now let's have a fun tour around ITA! Yay! Let's go! With the work of CGIAR and organizations like IITA, we have helped to transform agriculture in Africa. We work with various partners across sub-Saharan Africa to improve livelihoods, protect food and nutrition sources, create jobs, and conserve our natural resources. We work on improving Africa's important food crops and the environment where they grow. Here we are again in another very interesting unit called the Gene Bank. We keep all of these crops that are being worked on.
But how does IITA help the farmers?
When the researchers come through, they take the knowledge they gathered while doing the research and they pass it over to the farmers who uses it in his farm, and in doing that is able to get lots of food and all of these good traits we want in the food. We also look at the crops and soil environment and develop good agricultural practices for the farmers. Remember that a combination of all this, the good crop environment, the good soil environment, and the good variety will help the farmer increase his yield. And that means more money and better livelihood for the farmer and his family. Do you know where our food comes from? They are all produced by our farmers.
But Mercy, why are the farmers old?
Most of our farmers in Africa are about 60 and above. Many of them have been farming since they were kids and young adults. We need to find and train more people of this generation who would be happy to use more improved technologies, modern science, ICT tools, big data, and other technologies to improve agriculture. CGIAR program for youth and women is one of the most effective projects being undertaken with several partners like banks, the government, farmer groups, and other institutions. And in 2012, there was a particular program that was started. It's called the IITA Youth Agripreneurs. And by doing this, you have been able to provide jobs for young adults all over Africa. We have also helped to kickstart most of those people into careers in agribusiness and other agricultural enterprise. There are lots of programs that have been developed for women empowerment by using the product that have been produced from IITA, and they've added value to this product.
But how do we add value to agriculture?
Don't you want to hear how some youths have done it?
Yes, we do!
À Bukavu, nous sommes
In
engagés.
Bukavu, we are engaged in various profitable business lines. The most important is the production of high-quality cassava flour. This flour has changed lives in DRC. We have moved from 900 kg to 14 tons per week, with a volume of sales from $600 to $10,000 per week.
À $10,000.
When we started, we had a starter pack from IT in form of cash. The struggles are there, the hard work is there, but in the midst of the hard work, we are happy doing what we're doing because we know there is a future in it.
Now we also have a new program where we introduce secondary school students to agriculture called the Start Them Early program, or the STEP program. And we convince these secondary school students to develop a career in agribusiness. So far, STEP has actually benefited many students in Kenya, in DRC, and in Nigeria. The governor of Oyo State, Oluseyi Makinde, inaugurated the facility at Fashola Grammar School.
I was trained in mechanization, ICT, biogas, poultry. Today I have the opportunity, and I believe in the nearest future I can use it to sustain my own living and to help others around me in order to eradicate poverty.
The Oyo governor then expanded the program to cover 10 other locations in Oyo State to serve as a pilot and showcase how agriculture can help transform a community.
Our farmers help produce the food that we eat every day.
Yes, they really work hard.
They are heroes! Now I understand more about agriculture.
Don't we all want to become farmers?
Yes, we do! Agriculture is cool!
Now let's go become farmers.
I think all of us want to be farmers now. Hollywood has nothing on some of these great presentations that we've gotten. Thank you so much. What interesting videos. Please remember to put your questions in the table in the Facebook and Twitter, as we had indicated before. Let's move to our Q&A segment. Please allow me to introduce our CGIAR scientists from each center featured in these videos. First, I'd like to introduce Catherine Diomo, the manager of the Biosciences Hub for Africa, ILRI.
Thank you, Muthoni. Welcome, everyone. My name is Catherine Ziomo. I'm a scientist in the CGIAR, based at the International Livestock Research Institute in Kenya, Nairobi, where we use biosciences and high-end technologies to increase access to animal source foods. I believe that good nutrition is the currency to human health, and it's so wonderful to be participating in this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Our second panelist is Leanne Winowick. Sorry if I massacred your last name, Leanne. Soil theme leader for EXPO. Please, Leanne, we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Leanne Winowicki. I am a CGIAR scientist at C4ECRAF based in Nairobi, where we are really just urging everyone to take responsibility to pay attention to our soil in order to build functioning soil ecosystems for restoration and sustainable food systems. Thanks so much, Muthoni.
All right, thank you so much, Leanne. Now I'd like to invite our third panelist, Sika. Sika, I'll let you introduce yourself. She's an agriculture and economist for IITA.
Yes, my name is Sika, and I am a CGIAR scientist working in IITA based in Malawi. I primarily work on climate change issues, and I'm very honored to be on this panel.
Great, thank you so much, Sika. And finally, our panelist, the only man for once.
Well, I'm here.
Yes, I see you, Kanayo. Elliot, an agriculture and climate change scientist at Africa Rice. Elliot, please, we'd like to see you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elliot Osiogo. I'm a scientist at CGIAR from Africa Rice, based in Cote d'Ivoire. I work in the area of climate change and agriculture. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. I know the discussions we're going to have are going to be absolutely amazing. I'd like to start this off with a question towards our renowned host, Dr. Nwanzi. Watching these great tours, what do you think are some of the most important ways that the CGIAR research is contributing to transforming African food systems?
Well, thank you again, Muthoni. I think, first of all, let me highlight one very salient fact here. People are at the heart of what the CGIAR does. And this is very clearly articulated in the 4 videos that we have just seen. Let me now try to go specifically to each of the videos. And I will start from the bottom up. IITA. We have seen this video tells us that IITA has an extensive partnership network across sub-Saharan Africa. And the importance of this is that IITA has been able to harness this partnership to improve livelihoods, protect food systems, food and nutrition sources, and to conserve natural resources. Now, what is most exciting for me here is IITA's program on young agripreneurs. This has been the most successful program, building entrepreneurial capacities and creating jobs for women and youth in several African countries. And this gives me hope for our youth, our young population who are going to go into agriculture. On Africa Rice, the scientists use the genetic diversity conserved in their world-class gene bank to develop new varieties of rice that are adapted to Africa's rice systems, including, of course, today's challenges of climate change and nutrition, as Elliot pointed out to us in the field. We also saw how participatory approaches, really bottom-up participatory approaches to land and water management, such as the smart valleys, are used to support farmers to sustainably increase their yields, their incomes, and resilience to flooding or to drought. At IRI, The ERI campus itself is a world-class research facility that hosts many CG centers, but as well as non-CG centers. It's the most diversified and actually exciting campus to visit. And here, scientists across the continent use biosciences to solve key challenges facing crop and livestock production, and they foster the next generation of African scientists. And let me just so quickly say this. I was very impressed to see how young our scientists are at our centers. So there is a lot of hope because I used to say, well, I don't see them coming up. I'm now in the evening of my life, and I don't see younger ones, but I'm really impressed to see the caliber of our young scientists. And their work ensures that food is safe, sustainably produced, and nutritious. And now, of course, C4 aircraft. I think this particular video from the C4 aircraft showcases another thematic area of CGI research. The use of advanced technologies to assess and improve landscape resilience, soil health, crop nutrient content. And this work is crucial to improving food security and livelihoods in Africa. So let me thank our scientists again, our centers, for sharing with us, for allowing us to go on this tour across Africa. Back to you, Muthoni.
All right, thank you so much, Kanayo. Now, I'd like to start with our first question. I will table this to Ilri, where I'll ask, how important is livestock to food system transformation?
Thank you, Muthoni. The consumption of meat, milk, and eggs remains central in economic development and also developing viable economic value chains for these livestock. So therefore, when we talk about improving food security and also ensuring that the meat or the animal source foods that we eat are free from disease, it remains critical in sustainable development and building healthy communities and also developing pathways for ensuring that people have access to these foods. So therefore, livestock production remains central to economic development and sustainable agricultural development. It's one of the key elements in making sure that we have disease-free animals or disease-free food sources that are also healthy and thriving through the improvement of these systems. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And the next question, I will send it over to C4 eCraft, where I'll ask, why is soil health important and why should we worry about it?
Thanks, Muthoni. Soil is so fundamental that it is often ignored. It provides so many ecosystem services, from filtering and regulating the water cycle, providing nutrients essential for plant growth and human nutrition, and it has the potential to capture large amounts of carbon, contributing to climate change mitigation. So for this reason, it is so important that we continue advancing our knowledge to learn about soil health and its management. At C4 eCraft, we're advancing science to develop appropriate technologies that really close the learning loop from soil testing to dissemination of this information to farmers, land managers, and policymakers to manage our soil ecosystem in a more sustainable way. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Now, I'd like to move over to Africa Rice, where I'd like to ask, why is small-scale irrigation approach called Smart Valleys? Elliot, you're on mute. Please unmute.
Thanks, Muthoni. Inland valleys are common landscapes in Africa and are increasingly being considered as future food baskets due to the relatively high soil fertility and water availability compared to the surrounding lands. But despite the high agricultural potential of inland valleys, climate-related stresses such as droughts and flooding negatively impact crop production in inland valleys. Options for quick uptake by farmers in Africa should require low investments, but also be adapted to the irregular land topography of Inland Valley. And the Smart Valleys approach meets these two criteria by enabling farmers to adapt to droughts, flooding, to an appropriate design of irrigation and drainage canal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Elliot. Now, my colleague at IITA, I'd like to ask you, how can we rally African governments to support these youth in agribusiness programs?
What we should do to rally the African government is basically to engage with them. So to engage them through the project that are there, like the TAT program or Enable Youth program, where they can get loans to be able to establish, support the young people who get into agribusiness. Another way also is to also engage them and work with the formal school system, where we can promote agriculture at the secondary school level and ensure that youth look at agriculture in a positive way. Even me growing up, when I was going to high school, we had a system like that where we were doing composting, we planted crops, we were processing it, and today you can see I'm working in the agricultural sector. I do not look at it negatively. But indeed, having new programs like what STEP is doing with new machineries that ITA is promoting, and new technologies would be very good for our countries, yes.
All right, great. Thank you so much. We have one question that I'd like to table to all the centers, and this is, how has the CGIAR labs shifted their work in the age of COVID? How has it affected the work, whether it's the process of or the type of work you're focusing on? How has COVID added urgency, or how has COVID added urgency to the work that you're currently doing? I think I'd like to do a round, so I'll start first with Ilri.
Thank you, Muthoni. COVID has both been an impediment and an opportunity for us to serve the country and help the government with the COVID testing. But in terms of the work that we do, it has slowed down the work in terms of accessing the labs and also finishing on lab-related activities. However, this has also allowed us to realize that the equipment or the relevance of biosciences is not only limited to livestock and crop production, but also has an impact on human health as well, as we served and contributed to the testing for the government here in Kenya. So this has both been an opportunity for us to see the relevance of biosciences and also to contribute to human health in a different way. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Ikraf, Sifo?
Well, as we know, COVID has really forced us all to rethink our relationship with nature. And given the role of the CGIAR in building sustainable and resilient ecosystems, in terms of our labs, it's actually made them even more, increase the demand for our labs even more. So when we're talking about building soil health resilience and looking at DNA sequencing and looking at biodiversity, all of which we do at C4ECRAF, it's really increased the demand. And in fact, even in our soil lab, we have now tripled our physical soil archive, which is the largest archive of systematically collected soil samples across the tropics. And this archive allows us to continually test new technologies that allow us to better manage our soils now and in the future.
Thank you so much. Yes, please, Africa Rice. Elliot, we can't hear you, you're on mute.
Yes, as a response or as a mitigation measure to continue working despite the COVID-19 pandemic at Africa Rice, there have been a lot of e-learning tools that have been developed to enable the partners who provide the seeds to the gene bank to be equipped with the skill and the tool and not require actually physical contact. So the approach was to develop online material e-learning tools to capacitate the national partners in continuing business despite this very challenging time.
Thank you so much, Elliot. And finally, Sika.
In IITA, it's exactly like what Kathleen was saying. It was both an opportunity and a challenge. In terms of a challenge, it has slowed a lot of our activities. But in terms of opportunities, that at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a rally to see how we could support our African governments with improved seed, improved technologies. And I know that IITA, we really worked at that level. It was a center-wide initiative that was undertaken.
All right, thank you so much. We have a question directed to Kanayo, so Kanayo, be ready. The question is, how do you reconcile the backlash livestock is receiving in the global north and its absolute value in the global south? And how will the UNFSS address the contradictions of the livestock sector?
Well, thank you very much. Well, as a friend of mine once said, there's politics in everything. So it depends on who is writing the story or who is writing the scientific paper. I think we all know the role that livestock plays in bringing about sustainable livelihoods, sustainability of the environment. I think it's when we have an over-exploitation and a massive production that leads to waste that we degrade our environment. We can see how small livestock, ruminants, chickens, and the rest of birds and the rest of them, how they contribute to improved livelihoods of small producers. And right across Africa, there's hardly any home in the rural area that doesn't have either a little chicken coop or some goats and sheep. Now, I would say that, of course, when you mass produce and when you use excessive inputs beyond what the environment can sustain, like you have in parts of the world, in the north in particular, where there has been an over-exploitation, both of farming systems and livestock production. And we have seen the massive contribution that does to the environment. So I would say that, and one we must always understand, I think this is on record, that Africa remains the only part of the world that has the potential to increase productivity in all aspects of agriculture. That says a lot. So we still have to meet that potential, and it's left for us to use the high tech that's available to us, like has been shown to us by in the various tours we just made, to actually achieve Africa's productivity levels to the point where they respond to the need of populations, not only in rural areas, but also can feed the cities. At the same time, they are well adapted to a sustainable environment and livelihoods.
Oh, thank you so much, Doctor. Now, we have one more question that I'll open up to anyone who would like to answer, which is, how can we engage the media more often to make these scientific breakthroughs to be the talk of the town?
Take them on field tours, take them to meet with farmers, take them to see. There's nothing better than seeing. What is it? Seeing is believing. In my career, we've had press that have published information that were not well informed. And they have been able to be invited to visit farmers' activities on the ground in rural areas. And I have lived through instances where they reverse their stories. And I believe that scientists must learn how to communicate beyond scientific language. When you speak to the press, speak in very simple language. And please always communicate, communicate, communicate. That's my contribution to that question. Let's listen to the scientists.
Yes, thank you so much. Those are amazing closing words. We're running short of time, so I'm sorry, and I'm glad that Kanayo has wrapped it up in such a bang. So as everyone has heard, communicate, communicate, communicate. Share what we know. Knowledge is power. Sharing it is even more powerful. So now please make sure that we're just initiating the conversations just now, and to go to the summit website. Remember these hashtags, #1CGIAR, #Voices of Food Systems. This is a 1 year. We're going to be having this conversation running for the next 1 year, and we want to hear your voices, so make your voice heard. We would like to thank and the support that we've gotten from UNFSS and to our funders, with which none of our work would be made possible. And thank you so much, and stay tuned to the next live session. And thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.